Banquet at Beorn's, a relaxing bedtime story for J.R.R. Tolkien fans. Read by the author, J.M. Tuber. Mae Govannen, and welcome to a relaxing tale inspired by the imagination of J.R.R. Tolkien. We'll embark this quiet evening on a tranquil journey back to a place that you hold dear in your heart, back to Middle-earth. And we'll revisit many of your favorite friends from The Hobbit: Gandalf the Grey, Radagast the Brown, Bilbo Baggins, and of course, Beorn. And who knows, perhaps some other guests will join us as well. No matter how you arrived here, who you are, or where you're from, you are most welcome on this pilgrimage. Remember, the hardships and concerns that have distressed you throughout the day, well, they won't be coming with us. You have permission to leave the day's obstacles and worries behind. Just you and your imagination will journey where we're headed. And now, released from the grip of the day's challenges and stresses, find a comfortable spot to recline, settle in, and just be yourself. This moment is a gift, a chance to rediscover the magic of Middle-earth and unwind in the gentle embrace of Tolkien's mythical world. Your childhood friends are expecting you. A restful night's sleep is beckoning, and a blank canvas of promise and possibilities awaits. Tonight, our tale begins at the end of the Battle of Five Armies in The Hobbit, and immediately picks up where my first relaxing bedtime story, Back to Beorn's, ended. Traveling over the snowy plains of Wilderland on your way to visit your larger-than-life friend, Beorn. Let's begin. Chapter 1. A gentle morning light streams through the carriage's stained glass window, casting a radiant but soft blue, white, and green light on the dark mahogany wooden floorboards. There is a slight chill in the air, but nestled in your comfy down comforter, plush pillows, and soft taupe-colored couch, which served as the most delightful bed last night, you're as warm and content as can be, despite you traveling by carriage all through the night from Roscoble. You've had one of the most pleasant, restful night's sleep in years. You stretch, readjust yourself, and refluff your plump pillows to get comfortable again. The rhythmic ticking of the clock reaches your ears, and you can make out a handful of birds chirping as the morning begins to unfold. Scents of aged wood and jasmine linger in the air. Thinking about it for a moment, traveling through Mirkwood Forest would have been tolerable, almost enjoyable, if you were riding in this carriage. Beyond providing you the most agreeable accommodations you've enjoyed since Rivendell, it brings you a strange but wonderful feeling of safety and security. Looking around and admiring the space, the craftsmanship is astounding. From the tactile, half-timbered cream-colored walls, finely carved oak writing table, and silver-accented bookshelf, and even the heated bricks that rest below the rich mahogany floorboards that keep the carriage at a perfect temperature. And of course, the taupe, feathery, soft couch that was your bed last night. There are times in life when beauty and wonder stare us right in the face, only to go unnoticed. But you're learning the more you appreciate the beauty around you, the more you find. And it's not hard to find it in this carriage. It truly has been a remarkable journey from Roscoble, and you could spend all morning admiring the intricate features and gilded craftsmanship of this carriage. However, you frittered away long enough this morning and already missed breakfast, but you still have a sporting chance at making second breakfast. So, you make the troublesome decision that it's time to leave the warm sanctity of the carriage and venture out into the morning. Gandalf and Radagast are nowhere to be found. However, they've been kind enough to put out a few morsels and drink in your modest pantry, which will more than suffice to get you on your way this morning. Where could they have gone, you wonder? Maybe they've gone in search of pipeweed, some of Beorn's honey-kissed ale, or maybe they've gone to see Beorn himself. What exactly do wizards do with their free time? You could ask Gandalf, but probably won't get much of an answer out of him. Conversely, Radagast may give you an answer, but making heads or tails of it might be a challenge. Well, in any case, they aren't here, and after your most agreeable, restful night's sleep in weeks, it's now the perfect time that you start your morning. After taking a moment to express gratitude for your safety and your sustenance, and rubbing the sleepiness out of your eyes, you shuffle over to the pantry, grab and then fill your mouth with a handful of dried nuts and fruits. Instantly, you experience the taste of wonderful salty and sweet flavors. Combine that with the delightful crunch of the mixed almonds and soft, chewy fruit, and the day feels like it's off to a good start. You can feel that today holds something special for you. Finding a wooden platter, you fix a helping of a few additional culinary delights, and then recline at the table next to the plush, comfy couch that you slept in last night. It's refreshing to relax and eat without a care or a hurry in the world, and you think about all of the day's possibilities ahead of you. To wash down your sweet and salty medley, you reach for a cool glass of mountain spring water, Erebor's best. Thank you again, Balin and the dwarves, for such a thoughtful gift at our parting. You then take to nibbling at the buttery, flaky elven pastry, lembas bread. Its crisp outer texture and delicate inner breading are the perfect combination to cap off this morning's first breakfast. Seeing that you have a few bites left, you decide to spread some of the strawberry preserves that have been patiently waiting in a clear glass jar with the label that just reads, jam. Taking a butter knife, you spread a generous layer of the rich, ruby strawberries across the outer crust. The elven pastry chefs who baked such a flavorful treat would bristle at the notion of spreading preserves over their delicate cakes, let alone washing them down with a refreshing glass of spring water from the lonely mountain of the dwarves. However, you found the culinary experiment much to your liking, and it's not long before you're feeling more than satisfied and content with what you were able to forage from the carriage's small pantry. You take a deep, cleansing breath. No dwarves, goblins, or dragons today. A reassuring thought indeed. Come to think of it, you're reminded that there is no Radagast or Gandalf either. You love the company of those two old wizards, but Gandalf can be sharp, and Radagast eccentric. So having a temporary reprieve from them isn't always a bad thing. It's pleasant just to take things at ease. The worries of the world, they can wait. You're giving yourself permission to just be, not to do anything specific, but enjoy a moment of serenity and just appreciate life. Your father, Bungo, would be proud. He enjoyed lounging around the Hobbit hole on frosty mornings in Hobbiton. Having successfully driven away the morning's hunger pangs, you head over to the bookshelf, peruse the worn, leather-bound volumes, and then select an oversized work that contains poems, elven lore, and ballads from a kindred of elves that has not been seen in many ages. Fascinating and yet flawed folk who would have benefited from good old Hobbit common sense. You nestle back into the plush cushions of the couch, wrap the warm and breathable comforter around you, and settle in to leaf through the pages of this time-worn, reverent manuscript. It was close to 10 o'clock. You were still lounging about in your teal-fitted pajamas, and there was nothing on your calendar and nothing on your to-do list. Reuniting with Beorn and revisiting his animal companions is an encouraging thought. And you'll get to that. For now, you're content listening to the ticking of the wooden wall clock, humming an elvish lay that you remember Elros singing during your time in Rivendell, and periodically eyeing a sunbeam that is lazily moving across the floor. Unhurriedly, you change out of your luxurious pajamas and into something a little more pragmatic for the winter weather that's just outside. On go your caramel-colored corduroy trousers, your cream-colored dress shirt, olive cotton button-up vest, and your favorite red waistcoat with the golden buttons engraved with the number 14. Again, thank you, dwarves of the Lonely Mountain, for such a thoughtful gift. Procuring a well-traveled, weathered, but sturdy hickory walking stick, you grab the heavy metal latch to the door of the carriage, take a healthy, cathartic breath, and prepare yourself for your next adventure. It's time for you to find your friend, the bear. The heavy wooden door of the carriage opens with a sturdy clang. The morning sunlight falls on your face, and you feel Jack Frost's icy touch as you find yourself in a winter wonderland. Based on the angle of the newly risen sun, you're facing southwest and securely tucked inside Beorn's bucolic stronghold, which consists of a handful of well-constructed wooden buildings, outhouses, barns, and homes surrounded by concentric circles of thorn bushes and oak trees. Those time-worn but steadfast oaks look like vigilant sentinels, keeping watch from the outside perimeter of the property. Inside of them is a formidable thorn hedge of prickers, barbs, and brambles that no one would intentionally tangle with. However, already being inside of their confines, they offer a reassuring and unassailable feeling that neither orc nor any mischievous creature who goes bump in the night could harm you. That's a blessing, an agreeable feeling to have, considering folk from respectable places would call this area of the world the uncivilized wild. Even if an especially inquisitive or foolhardy orc or warg did happen to slink past the oaks and thorn hedge, Beorn would be there to greet them and to show them his unique brand of savage hospitality. No, Beorn's homestead isn't the Elven King's halls or the Dwarven caves of the Lonely Mountain. But this is as safe and secure as you can be nestled between the Misty Mountains and the dark forest of Mirkwood. And that's something to feel thankful for. Just tucked inside the encircling thorn hedge on the north side of his farmstead, laying dormant now are rows and rows of Beorn's beehives. They'll be abuzz with activity before too long, But while winter lays over this land, they remain large white snowdrifts. Gardens that usually are teeming with flora and fauna also lay dormant, while winter's icy hold grips the land. The stillness of the brisk air amplifies the crunching of the snow beneath your bare but sturdy feet, creating a rhythmic sound that accompanies your every step. And you catch glimpses of gentle wildlife camouflaged in the white landscape, such as rabbits and deer gracefully passing by. The pastoral silence is only interrupted by the distant calls of birds or the hoot of an owl perched on one of the oak trees. Despite the chilly weather, the serenity and tranquility of Beorn's home give you a welcome peace and calm, and your heart feels warm. You take just a moment to enjoy the cold, crisp air and the sunlight softly warming your face. With all that you've been through, going there and now coming back again, you've earned it. You breathe deeply and reflect on how much you and your life have changed since you were visited by 13 obstinate dwarves and an old man in a battered hat. You've certainly had your share of adventures, escapes, and hardships along the way. But you are grateful for the friendships you forged, for the courage that you've developed, and for discovering the apparent stroke of luck that you possess. So often, our heads and our hearts are somewhere else other than where we are. But right now, you're living in this moment, taking it all in, and the world feels right. Of course, Beorn's homestead hardly rivals the splendor and sanctity of Rivendell. But being here in winter, the plains of Wilderland between the misty mountains and the great forest of Mirkwood have kindled a deep appreciation for the simplicity and rawness of the wilderness. Your thoughts take you back to your home, to the Shire, with its quaint lanes and burrows, the rousing and convivial company at the Green Dragon Inn, and your sun-dappled garden that bursts with color. And yes, all of the uncouth, simple relatives, neighbors, nosy onlookers, and gawkers. You miss all of them. You miss all of the Shire. And yet, now that you've seen how wonderful and sometimes terrible the wide world is outside the Four Farthings, you wonder if going back to your quaint hobbit hole will feel too confining, too mundane. You're certainly not the same hobbit who worried about not having a pocket handkerchief when the journey began. Will you still feel the same about the Shire when you return home? Time will tell. Looking to the west, over the high thorn hedge, oak trees, and far-off white-capped misty mountains, you imagine what's going on this morning in the Shire. Folks back there are probably finishing second breakfast and looking forward to elevensies. The farmer's market in Frogmorton is in full swing for those who brave the nippy weather. And a hungry brunch crowd has undoubtedly gathered at the Green Dragon to get their fill before afternoon. Turning your gaze to the east, beyond the dark forest which looms even from a distance, lies the lonely mountain and your former companions. What could they be up to now? Rebuilding their lives and their kingdom, rekindling the forges and toiling in mines deep under the earth, you suppose. You wonder how they've taken to Dane as their king, and whether they've maintained a friendship with the men of Long Lake and the wood elves of Mirkwood. Looking back on them now, all of those adventures and escapes, the good and the bad, you're not sure that you would have it any other way. Except, of course, having Feely, Keely, and Thorin back. You've met some wonderful friends and never have to worry about running out of tales to relive and share with Hobbit lads and lasses for the rest of your days. Whether you're lucky, blessed, or both, you've experienced more of the world than any Baggins deserves to, and you feel indebted to Gandalf, Thorin, the dwarves, the elves, and the men of Lake Town for allowing you to share in their trials and triumphs. Your time reflecting and reminiscing is cut short by the sound of a pack of dogs trotting calmly but deliberately through the snow in your direction. To be precise, it was no less than 4 trim greyhounds and a younger chocolate Labrador retriever who followed at a distance and behind the other 4. From the thoughtful expression on their faces and placid disposition, they've been expecting you. Beorn must have told them that there was a third guest who arrived on the carriage. Nodding his head, the lead dog gestures to the south, toward the southern end of Beorn's main hall. The other 3 fall in line behind, and they walk in step like a well-rehearsed marching band, and they're expecting you to follow. However, the chocolate lab doesn't tag along with the pack. Instead, he cheerfully trots directly in front of you, plops down, and wags his long, fluffy tail. It looks like you have a new buddy. You reach down, pat your new friend's head, and vigorously run your fingers through his soft, sable winter coat. And he smiles back at you, eagerly showing a full complement of 42 canine teeth. He lets out a sharp, playful bark and bounds after the other 4 dogs, kicking snow up and beckoning you to follow. Making your way through a couple of higher snowdrifts, the dogs lead you to a well-tended, wide track that's been cleared of snow for at least for the moment. It's paved with multicolored cobblestones that run from the main gate to the northern end of Beorn's Great Hall. The limestone pebbles crunch and crackle as all 24 of your feet walk on the gravel. Your steps provide a pleasant, rhythmic vibration in your ears, sounding similar to a litter of rabbits munching on heads of lettuce in Farmer Maggot's fields. The track gives way to a narrow gravel path that leads through the garden to the southern end of Beorn's Great Hall. A crisp, invigorating scent of pine needles lingers in the air, intensified by the cold, clean breeze, and the earthy musk of decomposing leaves mingles with the subtle sweetness of sap seeping from dormant trees. As you draw near to Beorn's homestead, the soothing smell of kindled hickory logs on an open fire permeates the chilled air. It smells wonderful. Making your way around the southwest corner of the Great Hall, the refreshing feel and sound of gravel scrunching underfoot is interrupted by the unmistakable, deep voice of your dear friend singing and laughing to himself. Ha 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 ha. And there, playfully wrestling with his 4 greyhound companions, black hair and full beard blowing in the winter breeze, is your brawny buddy, Beorn.
Come over here, friends. So you found our dawdling guest, have you? Good lads.
He wears a tunic of sturdy, coarse tweed that hangs down to his hairy knees. It is fastened tight about his waist with a heavy canvas burgundy belt. Below his muted brown tunic, Beorn sports a teal fleece undershirt, and what first resembled a black heavy sweater below his woven undershirt actually was his thick, dark chest hair. It turns out your friend is always insulated from head to toe against harsh elements because of this sweater that he never takes off. Protecting his colossal size 22 feet and his legs that look like ruddy tree stumps covered in black moss are mocha-colored boots crafted from tough layers of felted wool, affording warmth and protection during his long treks as far north as the rocky feet of the Grey Mountains. He wears no hat and, of course, no animal leather, fur, or pelt. Beorn's outfit is as rugged and raw as the land in which he lives. It has to be. Should his clothing fail him out in the wild, it could mean the difference between life and death. Looking up from playing with his pooches, Beorn lets out a booming laugh and gives you a wave along with a beaming smile across his furry face.
Ha ha, well, Mr. Baggins, I'm glad to see you made it up this morning, and...
Beorn gestures to the chocolate lab who is happily sitting up against your short legs.
It looks like you've acquired an associate.
Out of politeness, you nod in agreement. However, you recognize that it is rather pleasant to have a loyal companion, even one who chases his tail on occasion. Yes, he's quite the character, isn't he? I wonder how my mother Belladonna would have responded had I brought him home for dinner. She would have been beside herself.
Well, she's not here right now.
Beorn crassly responds. He pauses for a moment after his boorish remark, and to your surprise, the scowl on his face turns to a smile. He laughs at his own abruptness and sheepishly nods his head, acknowledging that he could have been nicer to you, his friend, and the last dragon tormentor of Middle-earth. Grinning back at him, you mull over that you've always appreciated Beorn's straightforwardness when it comes to communicating with others. Like him or not, Beorn doesn't care, and you respect him for being his true self. Too bad more hobbits weren't like that. You take stock in how your friend looks since you last saw him at the Battle of Five Armies. He's in good health and good spirits. And you espy something you've never seen Beorn wear before. A silver necklace strung with a set of 10 or more irregular pearls around his weather-worn neck. Noticing your interest in his jewelry, Beorn chortles to himself, and his mustache and full beard do little to hide the smile on his face, which now goes from one ear to the next.
Yes, a small token from your dwarvish friends in the Lonely Mountain. Only one like it in all of Middle-earth,
declares Beorn as he raises his bearded chin in the air. Begging your pardon, you squeak, of course not wanting to insult your host, but pearls, while they are appealing, are hardly unique or prized. Shifting from a quiet chortle to a full-out belly laugh, Beorn howls,
Pearls, eh? Is that what you think they are? No, Mr. Baggins. Pearls are for ladies, at least that's what I've always understood. These aren't precious stones. They're goblin teeth. Ha ha ha! None other than the goblin captain Bolg from Mount Gundabad in the Misty Mountains. Bolg and his fellow goblin wretches mortally wounded your friend Thorin, and the fiends look like they might finish him off. That was until I tore through his bodyguard of orcs and crushed Bolg without club nor hammer. I can still feel his bones snapping between my paws. Well, for what he had done to their lord, and in payment for me barring the Mountain King from the battlefield, Dwalin yanked out Bolg's fangs and then fashioned this pretty trinket for me.
Still beaming and rather pleased with himself, Beorn asks,
You had a big part to play in the dwarves' exploits as well. Did their greediness get the best of them, or did they gift you something as well?
Hesitating and feeling a trifle embarrassed, you awkwardly point to the gold fasteners on your red waistcoat. Well, these buttons, I suppose. Beorn nods, but the smile leaves his face. He seems disappointed. Perhaps he might have been more impressed should the dwarves crafted and gifted a femur bone from an unusually large goblin to be used as a hobbit walking stick. Hoping to change the conversation and refocus it on your empty, aching stomach, you squeak, "Begging your pardon, but I was hoping for—" Interrupting you, Beorn blurts,
"I already know what you're hoping for, Mr. Baggins. For someone so small, you do an admirable amount of eating."
Looking you over with an incredulous eye, stroking his thick black beard, and posing the question more to himself, he wonders,
"Where does all of that food go?" Well, let's head off to breakfast and get your hunger pangs taken care of. First, I'll show you to your quarters.
Chapter 2. Beorn then gives the greyhounds a nod and speaks a handful of grunts and growls, and the four dogs, having understood previous grunts and growls, amble off towards the main hall. Surprisingly, your upbeat four-legged friend with the onyx fur remains by your side, scanning between you and Beorn intently for clues as to what will happen next.
"I think you'll like what I've put together for you, Mr. Baggins. A cozy one-story guest home that has all the creature comforts that a halfling could want. You and your two conjurer companions can stay with me as long as you would like, at least until the spring thaw. If you do stay longer, you'll have to help me tend to my beehives by the gate. Sound reasonable, little friend?"
Having received such a generous offer is encouraging news indeed. Unless Gandalf insists upon it, you won't have to travel further during the inhospitable winter months. You hadn't voiced concern, but crossing the mountains in the dead of winter gives you a deeply uneasy feeling. Based on your last trip over the mountains, which included an unexpected and uninvited trip to Goblin Town, not having to battle the inclement weather seems like a better option. Hearing now that you will not be forced to tackle the mountains until spring is welcome news. A weight feels like it's been lifted off your shoulders. Giving Beorn a grin, you nod your head enthusiastically in agreement. Being able to stay with Beorn for longer than a few days is good fortune. And not having to live out of a suitcase like a vagabond, nor trek through the snow and ice, that's a blessing. Following Beorn's lead, the three of you leave the veranda on the southern face of his great hall and head toward the northeast to where the newly built guest home is. By this time in the morning, the sun is ducked behind somber gray clouds, which yielded a gentle, almost therapeutic snowfall. You hold out your hand, watching the snowflakes land lightly on your palm, and then leisurely melt away. Your canine friend bounds about, snapping his jaws at falling snowflakes as if he were playing a game with Mother Nature herself. Beorn looks down at the two of you.
"Never thought I'd build a guest house. It would only encourage visitors and vagabonds to stay, right? And yet here we are, and there it is."
He points with his weather-worn and scarred hand.
"Odd, isn't it?"
Beorn ponders.
"I guess people can change, Mr. Baggins. Maybe even me."
Coarse umber, beige, and maple-colored cobbled steps lead up to Beorn's newly constructed guest hideaway. Like the other structures on his land, it is fashioned primarily of wood and stone, which give it an inviting rustic charm. It has an unassuming yet cozy ambiance, designed to accommodate up to 4 guests. It also has smaller rounded windows to allow light in, but also to maintain an intimate, private feel. These narrow, frosted windows also ensure the guest home maintains a constant, accommodating temperature, even during harsh winter months. Wilderland, as you've already experienced, gets downright beastly during the waning of the year. What was remarkable about this relaxed abode for guests was its shape. Looking down from the clouds, the dwelling looked like one of Beorn's beehives, with 4 feet sticking out, like a turtle with its head in its shell. The rest of the structures in Beorn's farmstead were rectangular or square, but inexplicably, not this one. And you wonder why. Beorn unlatches the heavy timber door, and the 3 of you step inside an intimate, comfortable, ring-shaped sanctuary. Your eyes wander around the inviting, hospitable living quarters. Its rugged simplicity and unpretentious charm remind you of Hamfast Gamgee's home, although this space was much bigger. It is adorned with knotty pine walls and exposed beams that extrude an earthy, comforting aroma. The furnishings are crafted from weathered hardwood, including sturdy oak tables and hand-carved chairs with large wool upholstered, oversized cushions. In the center of the room crackled a large spherical stone fireplace, filling the room with a smoky, woodsy scent. The cobblestone motif from the front steps continued inside this space. Beorn recognized that placing wooden floorboards and wool rugs around a roaring fireplace wasn't a safe arrangement. So the center of the home was primarily constructed of stone. In fact, there's also a marble slab with a multitude of metal utensils and glass and metal jars resting on it, serving as a makeshift kitchen. The kitchen and fire pit are encircled by deep, relaxing chairs, fashioned out of sturdy oak with olive, beige, and burnt orange colored plush pillows, and hand-knotted wool blankets to keep guests toasty on frigid winter nights. This is the communal area where guests can read, daydream, or sip wine or hot chocolate and review the day's adventures and honey production. There is an open ceiling above you with chestnut crossbeams that are tightly latched to each other with a heavy rope. They form a pyramid shape as if the middle of the home is higher than the sides. The floor is constructed of honey-colored large oak planks, sanded and polished. Large hand-knotted rugs flank the center of the room and the fireplace, literally and figuratively warming the space. The rugs feature simplistic woven patterns and rich, natural colors of clover, burnt umber, and taupe. Their rugged and tactile texture invites you to sink your feet into their dense, plush pile. Walking on them soothes and reinvigorates your tired hobbit feet. Curiously, whether you walk on woven rugs or wooden floorboards, the ground below you was warm. Yes, warm in the dead of winter. Beorn, you ask, how is it that the floor is warm even though most of the ground outside is frozen cold?
Ah, you noticed that, did you, Master Hobbit? A humble invention of my own. Some time ago, I discovered there were underground hot springs in this land. I was able to reroute some of those springs underneath my houses to keep them toasty no matter how inhospitable the outside weather gets. Impressive, isn't it?
Well, yes, indeed. I wish we had such springs in the Shire, but the closest we can come to anything similar is the Brandywine River. and most of the time it's cold enough that jumping in, it is sure to give you the shivers. As you admire the quaint details and craftsmanship of the warm and cozy space, you look up at Beorn. How could an individual so savage that he could rip an orc's head clean off his shoulders have also the forethought and creativity to design a room any respectable Baggins would feel at home in, assuming the dwelling was underground and not above ground? In some ways, Beorn reminds you of Gandalf. Both can be irritable, irascible, and blunt, but they're also thoughtful, steadfast, and warm-hearted, so long as they aren't in a dreadful mood. Yes, as you look up at your hulking friend, you realize there's more to him than meets the eye. As you come to know, the same can be said about Gandalf as well. Forgetting Beorn's fierce nature would be a mental lapse that could cost you dearly. But you'd come to understand that Beorn is more than just an angry, abrupt bear of a man who dislikes dwarves and reviles goblins. He looks down at you, smiles, and rubs his large fingers vigorously through your brown curly hair.
Well, Mr. Baggins, why don't we explore the rest of the house?
You concur eagerly. Beorn strides away from the fire and toward one of the 4 alcoves in the house. You and the chocolate lab follow quickly behind. Each one of these 4 guest niches is like its own private quarters, a sort of safe and snug hideaway from other guests, and a welcome contrast to the large, spacious communal area in the nave of the home. Every guest nook is furnished with a homey but cushy twin bed that could relieve even the most restless sleepers. The bed frame is intricately carved from seasoned oak and adorned with meticulously detailed motifs of bears, bees, and other scenes from nature. The mattress, generally stuffed with soft straw and layered with fine linen sheets, supplies a soothing embrace for weary guests. Warm covers crafted from richly woven wool bear earth-tone colors and offer ideal insulation. A stout, mahogany-stained chest of drawers nestles next to each side of the twin bed, which function as nightstands. Beorn also furnished the guest nook with a double-door wooden armoire, which could be used to store a wardrobe, weapons, or both. And there is a cast-iron stove that provides guests with much-needed warmth, being far enough away from the fireplace. The heavy black stove also affords guests the opportunity to make tea, hot chocolate, or coffee, as well as heat smaller portions of food, perfect for a midnight snack or an early morning bite to eat before breakfast. Against the wall and next to a small, circular window with frosted glass was a freestanding, natural stone tub in which to bathe. It had metal tubing, perhaps copper or bronze, which connected to the tub and ran down through the floor. Last, but most important, there was a modest but respectable pantry of culinary goodies for each guest. Beorn, of course, would never keep meat found in a butcher shop, but the pantry was amply stocked with cashews, walnuts, dried apple slices, sunflower seeds, crunchy wafers, and a whole jar of golden honey. Having thoroughly explored and admired your personal quarters, your tranquil new lodging for the foreseeable future, you look up and smile, nodding your head in approval to Beorn. He has furnished you with a serene, nature-inspired respite, and without a sackful Baggins in sight. And you are most appreciative. This is wonderful, Beorn. One couldn't ask for more agreeable accommodations. I can't thank you enough, but I might petition for one additional courtesy. Furrowing his brow, Beorn suspiciously looks down at you, but waits for you to continue. "Oh, well, it's past second breakfast, and I have a rumbly in my tummy that needs my attention. Might we get some breakfast together?" you ask hopefully. Beorn's face softens, and he smirks. His large white teeth flash underneath his bushy black beard.
"You read my mind, Master Hobbit,"
bellowed Beorn with a twinkle in his eye.
"Let's make our way over to the main hall. There you can regale me with your account of your encounter with the dragon Smog. In return, I'll make sure your stomach is once again full and contented."
Looking down at your furry friend, his bright eyes shine back at you in anticipation. He seems to wholeheartedly agree that finding food is in order. So the three of you leave the confines of the comfy guest house and step back into the brisk winter morning, making your way to Beorn's main hall. Snow continues to gracefully fall from the billowy, ash-colored clouds, and an initial wave of cold air sends a quick chill up your spine. However, your two friends, one of them on 2 legs and the other 4, enjoy the change in temperature. After all, they are better equipped to handle winter than you are. The three of you trudge through the firmly packed snow on the ground, making a satisfying, crunching sound. En route to the Great Hall, Beorn shares that the Labrador Retriever understands him, but unlike his greyhounds, he doesn't converse back. You learn that the dog was found in the woods a few weeks ago, a dispirited, mangy bag of bones when Beorn found him. Beorn figured that he got separated from his owner and probably would have starved or frozen to death. Beorn took pity on him, took him back home, and has since been nursing him back to health. "What do you call him, Beorn? What's his name?" Arriving on the front steps of his great hall, on the northern side, Beorn shakes his head.
"Never gave him a name. To this point, nothing really came to mind. Why don't you do some thinking about it? He seems more at ease with you anyway. Maybe that's because you're closer to his size."
For a warm place to recline, a spot of hot apple cider, and some of those exquisite savory honey cakes that Radagast has raved about, "You have yourself a deal," you cordially respond. Beorn then thrusts open a sturdy, pitch-dark door that gives way to a rustic, ample space, with a fireplace in the middle. A glowing fire crackles away, giving off a pleasant warmth, sound, and ambiance. Wooden pillars with ornate carvings of flowers and leaves flank both sides of his great hall, and there is a long oak table close to the front door. Lush, colorful cushions are placed on each side of the bench. Along both sides of the walls are platforms where additional tables and extra beds are stored. The Great Hall of the Great Bear. At the far end of the hall, an equally large, dark door opens onto the veranda, where you initially met Beorn, at the southern end of this great hall. During the spring and summer months, there are wooden benches and a lush garden bursting with vivid flowers. But like Beorn's beehives, flowers will have to wait until winter loosens its icy grip. As the three of you enter the hall, Beorn shuts the heavy wooden door, and a handful of Beorn's animal companions greet you. 2 of the 4 gray canines you met earlier in the day, along with a beaver and an inquisitive raccoon. The group, including Beorn, carries on a quizzical conversation, making squeaks, growls, and grunts, which you can't make heads or tails of. But out of that conversation, the 2 gray dogs, like furry maitre d's, lead the 3 of us to the main table in the hall. The smell of hot breakfast drifts through the air. 2 place settings are thoughtfully laid across from each other. Between them, a complete, hearty country breakfast, without meat naturally, is a feast for your senses. Tantalizing smells and a warm steam rise from many of the dishes. An array of inviting platters are arranged on Beorn's long oak table, from fluffy golden buttermilk pancakes drizzled with maple syrup to warm flaky biscuits and creamy gravy. Heaping wooden bowls of velvety oatmeal are topped with fresh wild mountain berries and rich amber-colored honey. Well, of course. Beorn would eat roofing tile if he could squeeze but a few drops of honey on it. Clay pitchers are filled with freshly squeezed orange juice and chilled milk, and the hall is filled with the warm aroma of freshly baked bread, mingling with the earthy scent of roasted vegetables and the comforting fragrance of freshly brewed, dark-roasted coffee. Undoubtedly, this is one of the most exquisite and complete repasts since you've left the Elven King's halls. Everything looks so delectable that you can't wait to dive in. It's a downright shame Gandalf and Radagast are missing out on such a culinary feast, but you suspect they have more meaningful things to manage. Beorn casually plunks down on his sturdy wooden chair on his side of the table. Thankfully, an attentive raccoon who quietly disappeared shortly after the three of you arrived has returned with 2 additional plush cushions you can sit on, so your head won't be below the level of the table, making for a most awkward situation. Beorn instinctively fashioned the table for big people, rather than for us hobbit folk. You kindly accept the pillows from the masked mammal, which give him an unfortunate appearance that he's a bandit that's up to no good. But the raccoon bows his head to you in respect and jogs back over to Beorn. Sitting upon your multi-cushioned seat, you and Beorn don't waste any time indulging in breakfast and sharing what's on your minds. While talking, you savor every bite of the breakfast. Excuse me for asking, but where exactly are Gandalf and Radagast today? I half expected to see them when I awoke, but I haven't seen hide nor hair of them this morning.
Yes.
Beorn finishes a drink of orange juice and wipes his mouth and beard.
Those 2 arose early with the dawn. Actually, before the dawn. As usual, they were in a terrible hurry. They're always in a hurry.
Beorn shakes his head and samples some of the oatmeal drenched in honey.
Well, as usual, they didn't share much. Said they needed to travel south on an urgent errand. 2 great eagles from the Misty Mountains, Landreval and Meneldor, if my eyes didn't deceive me, bore them away before the sun had barely crept above Mirkwood Forest. Gandalf looked back at me and hollered,
"Be ready to receive honored guests, good host, and be on your best behavior. We're bringing back a jewel that will stop even you in your tracks."
Having just stuffed a freshly baked piece of bread with warm, sweet butter in your mouth, you didn't have the words. So you just shrugged your shoulders. Even if you could speak, you've never been good at figuring out Gandalf's innermost thoughts and riddles. Well, as the morning got on, the conversation shifted from how Beorn keeps his beehives to his newfound appreciation for the dwarves. Well, at least feeling a little better about them after seeing them clash with the goblins on the southern slopes of Erebor. When it comes to defending their homes, dwarves fight like mad. Beorn respected that about them, which made stomping goblins on their behalf all the more rewarding. He reclines in his oversized wooden chair, clasps his hands behind his head, and smiles proudly. Beorn's a good friend, but a bad, bad enemy. Everyone needs hobbies, you expect. Yours are cooking and conkers. Beorn's are beekeeping and smashing goblins. An unusual and somewhat comical pairing of leisurely activities for certain. During the conversation, you find several opportunities to sneak scraps and nibbles from the table down to your four-legged friend who has been curled up and resting below your wooden chair. As deft and secretive as hobbits can be, you suspect Beorn is more than aware of what you're up to, and just isn't paying any mind. Of course, you suspect that he'd approve even if he were aware of your culinary chicanery. Instead, Beorn takes the conversation in an unexpected direction. He expresses the fondness he has for his animal friends. He adores them, and he considers them part of his family. But sometimes he questions whether he's missing out on something that he can't quite place his finger on. You listen intently as Beorn confesses this new wrinkle in his personality. You don't dare say it, but you wonder if your brutish friend is becoming, well, civilized. At least a little. What a wonderful world in which we live. Beorn becoming domesticated, shaking your head in pure disbelief. You never thought you'd see the day. In turn, you express to Beorn that things have changed in your heart, in your mind as well. I don't feel the same hobbit who left Baggins so many months ago. And while the outside world might be too big for any halfling, I wonder if the Shire is just too small and slow-paced for me now that I've explored some of the outside world. You share with your host that you've been quietly asking yourself if there's another place you could call home, where you could find rest and stimulation for the soul without so many grubs, chubs, brace curdles, and good bodies hanging on the bell. Sympathizing with your aversion to unwelcome guests, Beorn reiterates that you are still welcome to stay with him for a time, which again is a comforting notion. Seeing a parallel between the restlessness in your heart and that of his own, Beorn lets out a great belly laugh.
Perhaps we're both growing, Mr. Baggins. I've always appreciated your fondness for relaxation and reverence for nature. Don't mistake me. Tearing off the arms of a vile goblin never gets old. But I can't shake the feeling that I'm missing out on something. Keeping up the garden in rows of beehives, spending time with my animal friends, and occasionally welcoming a wayward traveler like yourself keep me busy, but...
Beorn trails off and stops speaking. His heavy fingers thump rhythmically against the hard table as he searches for answers. Not coming up with any discerning revelations at the moment, Beorn instead asks you about confronting Smog while you were busy filling up the corners with the last of the fresh berries and chilled milk. Your host is especially curious about the dragon's ability to coax information out of naive travelers, often in a way that betrays themselves or their companions. He's never squared off against such a wily adversary.
Well, it worked out for the best in the end, I suppose,
he grunted.
But sharing all of those silly nicknames of yours with the dragon is dangerous business. Gentlefolk like yourself should be careful about giving your right name out in the wild. You never know when someone with bad intentions will come looking.
An uneasy feeling washes over you, and just for a moment, the blood drains from your face. Fingering the gold ring in your waistcoat pocket, you recall the goblin tunnels in the riddle game in the dark. You might have given away too much in the pits far underneath the misty mountains, confessed too much to the creature Gollum. You sit in silence for a moment, staring at the heart of the fire in the middle of the hall. Well, you think to yourself as you let the ring fall back to the bottom of your coat pocket. In any case, the wretched creature won't leave the security of the tunnels, abominable as they are, so there's no need to immediately be concerned. The conversation ebbs for the moment then all that can be heard are Beorn's animals walking to and fro, the crackle of the fire log, and the wind outside.
I hope breakfast was to your liking, Mr. Baggins, but perhaps now we can take steps figuratively and literally to burn off all of this extra energy from a big breakfast.
He explains that the Eagles are to return Gandalf and Radagast to the Carrick around midday.
We could hike there, of course, and get some much-needed exercise, and then travel back together.
Taking his leave, just for a moment, Beorn strides to the southern part of the Great Hall, out the large door, and onto the veranda in the back. And you find time to smuggle a couple of honey cakes into your jacket pocket and feed your patient canine friend a few more morsels from the table. Returning from the veranda and carrying 2 wooden and metal sleds and 2 walking sticks of tough knotted hickory, one being much taller than the other, Beorn calls for you to join him. His animal friends attend to breakfast dishes and clear the table, so the 2 of you can make your way out of the Great Hall, out of the heavy northern door, and out into the wintry weather. Not wanting to help with the housework, and perhaps being more intrigued by the promise of what Beorn had in mind, the chocolate lab bounds over to your side and seems content to join your trek to the Carrick. The 3 of you, side by side, amble past the thorn hedge and massive double wooden door main gate under the tall towering oaks, and then point your course due west, toward the lone snow-covered peak east of the Misty Mountains, the Carrick. Chapter 3. Notwithstanding the chilly air, your hike to the Carrick is pleasant and leisurely, and you feel safe and protected with Beorn leading the way. After all, what's scarier than a man who can turn into a 600-pound bear? Reassuringly, you tell yourself the answer to that question is nothing and no one. The sky, now a brilliant sapphire blue, dotted with large, puffy cumulus clouds, lifts your spirits with every step. As you make your way through the gentle, snow-capped countryside, Beorn recounts tales from his adventures in the wild. You share the small-town doings of the Shire and its townsfolk, which amuse Beorn. You travel past frozen ponds, snow-covered meadows, and clusters of trees and small bushes that are dusted with frost. At first glance, and from a distance, the landscape is barren of life. But you hear chirps and calls from black-capped chickadee and tufted titmouse birds from high up in the barren trees. The 3 of you trekking on toward the Carrick has attracted attention from some of the local wildlife. A graceful fallow deer, a grazing herd of moose, and Bashkir horses, all monitoring you from a comfortable distance. Not that they pose any threat to you, and in turn, they are not frightened by your presence. However, the wild is still the wild, so they've learned to be cautious. After a few walking breaks, of course, seizing the opportunity for the 3 of you to stay hydrated and to nosh on almonds, fresh berries, and some of Beorn's honey cakes, which you never seem to grow tired of, you finally find yourself at the edge of the great river Anduin and the base of the Carrick's snow-covered stony peak. This far north, the river here was frozen over, and you trust that it was safe to walk on. Not seeing any evidence of Gandalf or Radagast, the 3 of you make your way up the lower, more gentle slopes of the Carrick. Beorn pulling his 2 sleds, you with your walking stick and your 4-legged companion bounding about. The snow crunching under your stout hobbit feet is firm rather than powdery, And while Beorn's heavy boots sink into the snow, your feet barely make a dent in the pike's snowy covering. While your two companions handle the change in elevation and slope with ease, your legs feel heavy and fatigued. Slogging up a mountain, even a small one, isn't exactly like casually traipsing from Bag End to Tuckborough on a fine spring morning. Begging your pardon, my little legs can't match your pace. Would it be too much of a bother if we take a rest? You ask hopefully. Even with a first-rate walking stick, Beorn and your canine compatriot are just too fast on their feet to keep up with. Beorn frowns and strokes his beard. He looks impatient, which initially surprises you, but then you remember he's probably anxious to hear what the two wizards have to report. After all, what honored guest was Gandalf referring to upon his departure? Who could they be? And what kind of jewel, diamond, sapphire, emerald, or ruby, would stop Beorn in his tracks? You've never known your large friend to care about gems, so what could the wizard have meant? Under his bushy eyebrows, his dark eyes look down at you as he considers his options. Abruptly and quite surprisingly, he lets out a laugh, and without a moment's hesitation, both his strong arms hoist you up onto his shoulders as if you were a small sack of barley.
There you are. Now we won't lose any time locating the two wizards, and you won't have to worry about hurrying too fast on your hobbit legs. With that settled, we'll keep moving.
Being safely carried on Beorn's broad, sturdy shoulders was a comfortable alternative to climbing. The view is better, and your tired limbs appreciate the respite. Besides, the additional burden didn't seem to slow him down in the slightest. About halfway up the Carrack, you notice your canine friend stop in his tracks, closely listening to something that hadn't reached yours or Beorn's ears.
His hearing is better than yours and mine, Mr. Baggins. We're about to have company. My guess is it's the two wizards. If it's not, I hope they're in the mood for a scuffle. I'd like to burn off more of our big breakfast.
Thankfully, around a large snowdrift above your location, you see two aged men making their way carefully and methodically down a rocky, uneven path, one with a gray raiment and the other brown. Beorn's happy to see them, as you all are, but you can't help but wonder if he would have preferred a spirited tussle with an ill-tempered goblin or two. There's an aspect of his personality that seems to want to settle down, though he might not fully realize it now. Nevertheless, you don't know if he'll ever lose the primeval part of his personality. Make no mistake, he's a born fighter.
There you are, Gandalf and Radagast. Taking your time, I see. Perhaps wizards are too brittle to be asked to hike up and down snowy peaks.
Paying no mind to the slight, Gandalf barks.
I see you've taken good care of our burglar. I mean, ex-burglar Bilbo. Well, now that we've found each other, let's not dawdle. I know you have questions about our journey and what that means to you. But we still need to climb down the Carrack and make it back to the safety of your homestead by nightfall. It's not safe at night out in the wild. However, to satisfy some of your curiosity, and to save my poor ears from constant badgering on this hike, I'll only share that we'll be having a banquet, and you, my good sir, will be the host. That is all time will allow me to share right now.
Fair enough,
growled Beorn.
So you're in haste, Master Gandalf. I can't tell you how happy I am to hear you say that, for I can't do much to speed the leagues we have between here and my homestead. But getting down the Carrack swiftly, I have our transportation right behind me.
He then flashes a mischievous and somewhat smug grin for all to see. as if he just laid a winning trick down in a card game. To Gandalf's and Radagast's dismay, Beorn steps aside to reveal the two sleds he's been lugging up the mountain behind the two of you. Both wizards glance at each other and grimace. Clearly, they do not favor this form of travel.
Begging your pardon, Beorn.
Gandalf starts in a raspy voice.
I believe Radagast and I will sit this one out and just hike down the mountain. It's not dignified that one of our order partakes in such frivolity.
Undaunted, Beorn shoots back.
I don't know what frivolity means, but I do know that neither of you is all that dignified, Gandalf. Besides, everyone needs to have a little fun, and I'm not carrying your sled down the mountain, nor am I waiting for you both to scale down at a snail's pace. So climb on, say a prayer, and hold on tight.
Playfully punching Gandalf in the shoulder and nearly knocking the pointed hat off his head, Beorn bellows,
After all, it was you who indicated that time is short. Isn't that right, Gandalf? Besides, this isn't a request. You have to have some merriment too, Grey Wizard, even if it's forced on you.
You giggle behind your hands, hiding your face. You dare not laugh out loud, but it was amusing to see someone get the better of old Gandalf. He's a dear friend, but Beorn is right. Sometimes he does need to loosen up and enjoy himself. Gandalf remains unamused, and Radagast attempts to hide his anxiousness. Hurtling down a mountain peak on a wooden toboggan clearly does not appeal to either of them. Unfortunately for the two of them, Beorn remains obstinate.
Come on, Mr. Baggins, or should I call you Mr. Barrel Rider? You'll ride in front with me,
Beorn orders.
And I suspect our faithful Labrador can keep up beside us. Gandalf, you and Radagast take up in the other sled.
Each one of you gingerly climbs aboard your respective sleds, your childlike curiosity getting the best of you in spite of your fear. However, Beorn remains standing behind Gandalf and Radagast. Gandalf makes one last appeal to change the berserker's mind, but to no avail. With a terrific shove, Beorn launches the two wizards down the carrack on a wooden and metal rocket. Not to be outdone or outraced, he rushes then to your sled, and at full throttle thumps his backside behind you, propelling you and your sled down the mountain at a thunderous pace. You and Beorn zoom down the mountain, evergreens and snowdrifts zip by, and just about everything becomes a blur of white. Holding on for dear life, but having the time of your life, you crouch down below the lip of the wooden toboggan, so just the top of your head pokes out. Each jump and bump the sled hits incites Beorn to let out a raucous roar behind you. Loose snow flies into your face, and a chilly but invigorating wind rushes past as your sled hurtles downward. What would your mother Belladonna think if she could see you now? Not wanting to lose the race, nor slow down in any way, Beorn pulls even to Gandalf and Radagast in your sled. As you overtake the wizards, who are more interested in self-preservation than winning a race, both of them look more afraid than exhilarated. Gandalf has one hand on the reins and the other on his pointed blue hat so it doesn't topple and fly off the sled. And poor Radagast is just hoping to stay upright. Beside you, Beorn's black lab dashes alongside your sled. Wide-eyed and tongue hanging out, he's scampering down the mountain as fast as his legs will go. All the worries and cares in the world rush past you and fade away as you rekindle the thrill of being a Hobbit child. If you live to be 130 years old, you'll never forget the mental image of hurtling down the mountain on a rickety wooden sled with a man-bear whooping and laughing hysterically in your ear, and a black dog sprinting at full speed beside you. And just when you feel you can't take another bump, jump, or thump to your backside, the sled slows to a crawl. and the joyride down the mountain is over. Having reached the foot of the Carrick, you take a moment to catch your breath and recover your wits. You're grateful that Beorn's sled held together. For a moment, you weren't sure that it would. Scrambling to your feet, you find that your legs are a little unsteady after such a white-knuckle ride. The black lab couldn't be happier, but with his tongue hanging completely out of his mouth and loud panting, it's clear that even he's a little winded. And yet Beorn, still chortling to himself on his sled, looks like he'd march right back up the peak and do it all again without a moment's hesitation. Before he can make that suggestion, Gandalf and Radagast sluggishly glide next to your sled. Both wizards look pale, unamused, and mentally drained. Unsteadily, they rise to their feet, lean heavily upon their staffs, and vigorously brush the loose snow from their beards and clothes, all of which amuse Beorn. Squeezing a wizard in each arm, he cheers,
Well done, my venerable friends. I'm proud of both of you, especially you, Master Gandalf. In spite of the frown you now wear, I know you enjoyed the jocularity.
Not taking Beorn's bait, Gandalf impassively declares,
Fair enough, good sir. You've had your fun, but now we must be on our way if we're to reach your homestead by nightfall. We have a banquet to plan for tomorrow night. You have distinguished visitors arriving, and we all must prepare.
Beorn attempted to pry more information out of the two wizards, but after their harrowing ride down the mountainside, neither was in a mood to field questions, and both were still quite annoyed at the ice and snow that had found their way into their underclothing. Oh dear. Nevertheless, gathering up your personal items, nibbling on the lembas bread that Radagast had tucked away, thankfully it didn't get too bruised and battered on the sled ride down, and sharing some Miravor that Gandalf held, you begin the trek back eastward, back to Beorn's. Chapter 4. An hour or so into your hike back to Beorn's home, dusk comes upon you, so Gandalf whispers a quiet incantation to his staff and strikes it on the ground. From the top, it glows a bright blue flame, which illuminates your way. It begins to snow again, and the wind picks up and blows colder. You are oh so tempted to ask how much further the journey is, but you hold your tongue. As night begins to fall under thick cloud cover, you make your way out of a large cluster of birch and maple trees and into a clearing. Before you is a welcome sight. You see the large thorn hedge and the double-door wooden gate of Beorn's homestead. Torches on either side of the gate flicker and quiver in the cold, snowy wind. Not knowing how many more leagues your tired legs could have taken, a sense of relief and thankfulness washes over you. It's encouraging to see your home, even if it's just your temporary home. In fact, all of you, even Beorn, pause your progress for a moment at the sight of his homestead. A reassuring, large and heavy hand pats you on the shoulder. You're all grateful to be safe and out of the wild. Beorn's homestead is enchanting in its simplicity and pastoral nature. It's full of hope, possibilities, and serenity, and you feel fortuitous to dwell here, even if it might be only for a while. It's been an enjoyable hike, sharing stories and munching on lembas bread. But you've had your fill of adventure for the day. You keep it to yourself, but you're looking forward to a hot meal, a hot bath, and to climb maybe not into a hot, but a warm, cozy bed. You're hopeful that all three blessings are in your immediate future. Your legs are weary, your bones are chilled, your feet are sore. You've been overstimulated today, and your stomach is wagging like an empty sack. You hope Beorn and his animals have made preparations to care for weary travelers tonight. The good news, though you knew it not at the time, is that they have. You're in for a most delightful evening, meal, and untroubled, uninterrupted sleep. The heavy double-door gate swings inward with a low rumble, and it appears that Beorn's 4 greyhounds were patiently awaiting our return. He kneels down and individually rubs their heads in his hands. He then instructs them to escort you to the guest home. You'll lodge there instead of Radagast's carriage. The greyhounds lead you south along the now snow-covered cobblestone path. High above, the rich blue and purple night sky is filled with twinkling stars and a light of a full moon. The ice blue flame emitting from Gandalf's staff flickers in the snowy air, but provides a little more light along your way. To your right, you see the oversized, half-timbered carriage, although Radagast's 7 ponies aren't there. You presume they must be safe, warm, and well cared for in one of Beorn's many stables. To your left, cobblestone steps lead up to your guest home. Torches illuminate the heavy, olive-covered wooden door, and a soft, inviting glow can be seen in the small, frosted windows. Cold weather seems to be moving in as night gets on, but Beorn's half-timbered refuge looks well-suited to keep everyone inside warm and comfortable. Your spirits and hopes rise. Beorn announces that he'll retire to his quarters for a spell, but will join you for the evening meal. He reassures you that you're in more than capable hands, or more accurately, capable paws, and that his animal friends would attend to your needs in the most satisfactory way. Steaming hot baths are drawn to wash the earth from your face, and food and drink are prepared to restore your strength. Beorn continues on the wide cobblestone track southwards toward the Great Hall. Unruffled by the falling snow and temperature drop, he laughs to himself as he walks in the cold night air.
Ha 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 ha, their faces. Did you see their faces?
Apparently, Beorn is still amused by Gandalf's and Radagast's distaste for sled riding. With the wind picking up and the weather becoming most disagreeable, you race toward and then open the door to the guest's home. Radagast battens down the door behind you, leaving the wintry weather securely outside. A robust fire blazes in the middle of the circular home, giving off a most delightful warmth. The 4 of you, Gandalf, Radagast, and the Black Labrador, nestle up to the fire and warm your extremities. A soft orange and yellow light dance on your face as you outstretch your hands over the fire. Before long, the warmth returns to your fingers. You smile at your friends who are sharing the fire with you. The wind is securely kept at bay outside, and the group of you are now hunkered down in a cozy guest house for the night. You're now free to relax, quiet your mind, and rest your body after a long and busy day. After you've thoroughly driven away the shivers and cold from your body, you politely take your leave and retire to your private quarters, your niche in the guest house. It's time to strip off your sullied clothes and wash the earth from your face. You take note that Beorn's animal friends and helpers have been busy. Your belongings, including your fitted teal pajamas from the carriage, have already been moved into your private guest area and lay neatly on your comfy twin bed, along with a couple of fluffy, extra absorbent towels that are large enough that can be used as a blanket. If that wasn't enough to be grateful for, you see a hot bath that's already been drawn for you in the charcoal gray stone tub. Steam rises from the top of the water, and there's a subtle hint of a calming scent in the air that you've not known before. Taking in refreshing deep breaths of the warm, sweet-smelling air, you feel vigor return to your limbs and clarity to your mind. Any ill effects of an arduous hike melt away. Khaki-colored candles are thoughtfully placed around the tub and in your private quarters, and their diffused golden light settles and soothes you. You gently slip into the heated tub, one leg at a time. The hot water relaxes your worn-out muscles, and you feel the tension release from your lower back and legs. The smell of lavender soap and the still undefinable scent from the water coax you into the relaxing tub long after you've scrubbed yourself clean. From time to time, you can hear the cold wind blowing outside, but the water in the tub remains piping hot and serene. The hot steam mingles with the crisp air in the home, which creates a misty, enchanting aura. Relaxing there, free from the cares and worries from the outside world, your mind wanders and you wonder how the water stays heated. And then you remember Beorn revealing the hot springs underground that he discovered. That's how the water can stay so delightfully warm on such a cold night. When you see the old boy, you'll have to thank him. With no responsibilities and no hurry, you're savoring the most extended bath you've taken in a long time. You watch the steam rise from the water's surface and curl into the air, and listen for the rhythmic wind blowing safely outside of your indoor oasis. So much of life can center around meeting deadlines and meeting expectations. But on this night, and in this moment, it's about you and your wellness. You deserve it. Having been sufficiently warmed up and your mind and muscles thoroughly rejuvenated, your thoughts turn to finding fresh food and thirst-quenching drink. Reluctantly, you step out of the tub and completely dry yourself off from curly head to hairy toes, with a fluffy, oversized cotton towel that smells like soothing chamomile that eases your tension. After slipping on the comfy teal pajamas that were sewn just for you, you shuffle back to the common area of the guest house to see what Gandalf and Radagast have rustled up for a late-night meal. As you approach the glowing fire, the spicy, smoky scent from the hickory logs on the fire reminds you of holidays back home. The black Labrador leaves his curled-up position by Beorn's feet and greets you. He's tuckered out from the day's excitement, but still elated you're back. He's been waiting for you, along with Gandalf, Radagast, and Beorn, who has since joined them. The three of them lounge in oversized plush chairs by the fire. They pause their conversation and wait for you to join the company. Beorn asks,
So what's his name?
Gesturing to the black lab. His name? You respond in a puzzled tone. Oh, his name. You follow up as you playfully rub the top of the dog's head. You know, I'd been thinking about that on our hike back from the Carrick. It doesn't seem proper that he doesn't have a name. So, if it pleases you, Master, I'll call him Dash.
Dash?
Beorn asks, hoping that you'll expound on your answer. Well, yes, Dash, you reply. I don't think I'll ever forget barreling down the Carrack, the world whipping by in a white blur, and yet there he was, sprinting stride for stride with us, dashing like a bolt of thunder. I've never seen the like of it before. So, dash feels well suited. Seeing no objection from the group, you look down at your friend, rub his furry belly, and say, "Well, friend, it looks like we're going with Dash." Now that that's settled, pardon me for a second. I need to catch up with the rest of the company and have my fill of food. It looks like all of you, including the newly named Dash, have had a sizable head start on me. Beorn and his animal friends were kind enough to bring a feast of comfort food for you to sample. Perfect fare for cold winter nights. You're delighted to find steaming bowls of hot tomato soup, noodle soup, hot corn muffins with sweet warm butter and honey, spicy black bean chili, and for dessert, Beorn-sized slices of hot apple pie. And to wash everything down, there's cold spring water, warm apple cider, and hot chocolate, which is guaranteed to give you an enticing rush of sugar and drive the cold away. Everything looks delectable. Filling your plate and bowl not once, but twice, you nestle back into the plush, oversized chair, sinking deep into the cushions and wrapping yourself in an almond-colored, velvety down comforter. There now. You've been washed, dried, warmed, fed, and rested. Very proper indeed. And you're right where you belong. And now, as you indulge in your second piece of piping hot apple pie with just the right amount of cinnamon and the flakiest, most buttery crust that you've ever sampled before, you're feeling quite primed and ready for stories and songs as you sip on hot apple cider and sample one last piece of pie for the evening. While Beorn's animals stoke the fire and empty the plates, the four of you banter, sing, and share long into the night. And you discover that Gandalf and Radagast may be older than they appear. They knew people and places of long ago. Not just ancient tales and folklore, but first-hand accounts. How old are these two? Well, you're still not entirely certain. They didn't confess, but there's little doubt in your mind that they're older than any hobbit that you've ever met. When it's his turn to share, Beorn expresses that he has no less enmity in his heart for goblins, but he's come to realize that there should be more in his world beyond himself, his animal friends, and crushing goblin skulls when the opportunity presents itself. Gandalf and Radagast listen intently, but say little. Curiously, you thought you saw Radagast give Gandalf a wink and a smirk while Beorn was conveying his recent observations about life. What are those cheeky fellows up to? What kind of mischievous plan could those two be scheming? Not surprisingly, no clues or information are provided. As per usual, Gandalf has placed you on a need-to-know basis, and right now, he apparently doesn't feel you need to know. In lieu of learning Gandalf's hidden agenda, Radagast chronicled the history of the great eagles of Middle-earth, heralds and messengers of a mighty ancient king who ruled a kingdom that's no longer accessible from this land at least not to most. These eagles aided the High Elves in battling a terrible evil that the world thankfully has not seen since. You learn that Gwaihir the Windlord, who has been a trusted friend of Gandalf and Radagast, is a direct descendant of these great birds. As for you, when you're asked about Hobbiton, you of course speak of it fondly. You remember warm summer days in the Shire, back when the world was green and very young. You miss your home and your fellow hobbits. And yet, you share that the Tookish part of your nature isn't ready to settle back down in Baggins quite yet. There is still so much to explore and experience. Keeping the thought to yourself, you wonder in your own heart if you want to return and retire in Baggins. Beorn's homestead has proven to be a most accommodating refuge, and you feel indebted for the attentiveness and kindness that he and his animals have shown you. However, maybe there's somewhere else in the wide world that you'd feel more at ease, sort of like being at home and on holiday at the same time. For now, Beorn's homestead will do just fine. You're happy here. As the night wears on and the fire burns low, you begin to nod off in your comfy chair. The soft crackle of the fire and the dancing shadows on your friends' faces, the beige-colored walls, and the dark ceiling and wooden beams lull you to sleep. Half dreaming, you hear Beorn inquire again about tomorrow's banquet. Who is coming, and what do they need to prepare?
It's not another troop of dwarves, is it, Gandalf? I'm fonder of Doran's folk after fighting goblins alongside them, but I'm not anxious for another mob of them unexpectedly arriving on my doorstep.
Naturally, Gandalf and Radagast remain tight-lipped. You wonder if all wizards, if there are more, are this good at keeping secrets. All the gentle giant could get out of them was that the guests tomorrow were of high honor and that Beorn should be on his best behavior. Beorn is visibly bothered by this, but you're unsure if he was more agitated by not getting more out of the wizards or that they admonished him about his behavior. In either case, he sulks in silence, staring at the embers of the fire and wondering what the wizards have planned. The conversation for the evening draws to an uneventful close, and the four of you are left to the solitude of your own thoughts as you sip your hot coffee, tea, or chocolate. The fire pops and crackles, but no other sound is heard as the feeling of sleepiness overtakes you. The last notions you have before drifting gently off, wrapped in a warm and fluffy down comforter, are of Gandalf enjoying a pipe in silence, Radagast whittling a wooden squirrel out of a small hunk of wood, and Beorn petting one of his greyhounds but staring intently into the fire and speculating what tomorrow night will bring. Though all three are lost in their own thoughts, they remain vigilant while you are the first to drift off into very pleasant dreams. All night you imagine guiding the bakers in Rivendell on how to make mince pie with just the right balance of fruit and spices. What a curious dream. You wonder if there's a meaning behind it. Chapter 5. You awaken to an empty guest house late the next morning. Thankfully, someone's rekindled the fire in the morning, so it's quite comfortable, in spite of the conditions outside. Most of the day, the two wizards and Beorn are busy communicating and coordinating, moving this and that and racing to and fro in preparation. If you'll forgive the pun, it genuinely was a beehive of activity. From a distance, it looked like complete chaos, but you suspect Gandalf had things in hand. The three of them, along with a host of Beorn's animals, are solely focused on preparing for the night's festivities. There even was a hastily written parchment sign nailed to the northern door of the Great Hall that read, "No admittance except on banquet business." Not being much help in moving large pieces of furniture or hanging decorations from a height, not really wanting to, you might add, you feel insignificant and in the way. You acknowledge that it's probably best to take things easy today, rather than getting pulled into a flurry of activity and hassle. And you take the opportunity to take a respite. You'll have plenty of time to catch up with everyone tonight at the banquet. Permitting yourself to step away from the preparation pandemonium, you now have all day to relax and be alone with your thoughts. So, taking a handful of parchment, ink, and quill, as well as a thick flannel blanket and a tankard of hot chocolate, you find a quiet wooden table and chair on the veranda to chronicle some of your adventures with Thorin and company. Just some unpolished observations and notes while your travels with the dwarves are still fresh in your mind. You're immensely grateful to have shared in their exploits. Most of the bustling occurs on the north side of the Great Hall, so you can hear faint murmurings of voices as well as people, animals, and objects moving back and forth. However, outside of a stray rabbit scampering about in the snow, a barn owl hooting up in one of the trees, and the wind blowing west to east, it's tranquil and refreshing. The smell of pine and your parchment is in the air. It's satisfying being still for a time and documenting how your life has been turned upside down since you were visited by 13 vagabond dwarves and an old man in a battered hat. The tactile sensation of the quill in your hand gives you a cathartic feeling as you scribble and scratch on the paper parchment. The sound of pen on parchment never gets old. And in a pleasant stroke of good fortune, Beorn, all of you for that matter, couldn't have asked for more pleasant weather to host a banquet. Last night's bitter weather moved on and has been replaced by a remarkably sunny and relatively warm spring-type day. After all, it is still winter. Nibbling on snacks and sipping hot chocolate, which gives you a warm, tingling sensation from the top of your curly head down to your hairy toes, you lose track of time. Writing down the twists and turns of travels to Erebor, and now and again daydreaming about your adventures to come, has been a refreshing way to spend your morning. Gandalf might have chided you for misusing such a fortuitous day, but you and Dash are enjoying each other's company, and your quiet withdrawal from the busybodies who are bumping, thumping, and what sounds like turning the Great Hall upside down was a wise decision. After a crescendo of activity in which the commotion seems to have grown louder, all goes quiet. Then, within the Great Hall, you hear music that is completely unexpected. Not dwarven music. No, this is mellifluous, calming music that washes over you like a musical waterfall. Looking down at Dash, you grin. Hear that? Those aren't dwarves or men, boy. Those are elves. Allowing curiosity to get the better of you, you gather your items and take the gravel garden path from the back of the hall, through the dormant garden, and around to the front of the hall to investigate all the hubbub. Many decorative torches line the wide track from the double-door gate in Thornhedge of Beorn's farmstead down to the front of the great hall. The cobblestone path has been cleared of snow, and a large, ornate, and curious carriage is parked before the large, heavy door of the great hall. Beside that door, a silken silver banner wafts gracefully in the wind. It has a tall, golden tree on a green mound. You watch wide-eyed as Beorn's animals unload packages, parcels, and paraphernalia from the carriage. And as you rightly presume, there are elves in your midst. However, these elves are not from that of the elven kingsfolk, or even that of Elrond's. They are the same, but not the same. The elves from Thranduil's halls are typically clothed in earth tone hues of green and brown. However, these elves are arrayed in elegant but unadorned twilight gray tunics and cloaks. Some elves have thin silver circlets about their heads, but all fashion a green and silver brooch about their neck. They are aware of you, but tend to their responsibilities. Muttering to yourself, you ask, what do those two have in store for us today? What are elves doing here? And does Beorn even like elves?
That you'll have to find out, Master Hobbit,
declares a gentle and familiar voice from behind you. Radagast, having secretly strolled away from Gandalf's watchful eye, was taking a respite from the work at hand.
That reminds me, young sir. The day is getting on, and our guests will soon arrive. Before Gandalf catches sight of you, best get cleaned up and ready for tonight's festivities. You won't want to be late, miss out, and risk a stern lecture from Gandalf. I expect what's prepared could contend with the rousing rustic socials that you've held in the Shire. Expect it to snow food and rain drink for hours this fine evening. Now be off, and don't be tardy, lad.
With that, you and Dash hot-footed over to the guest quarters. But as you reach the oversized wooden door to the home, you hear voices and the sound of large wooden wheels rolling on the cobblestone path. A large Baroque carriage pulled by 3 majestic horses arrives. The carriage is painted in pleasing cream and forest green colors. It has elegant gold accents. Curiously, it is fashioned in the shape of a swan. The precision and artistic detail of its craftsmanship are astounding. A small band of armed elven soldiers, wearing gilded gold-plated armor and gray cloaks, accompany the carriage on either side. Some elves have quivers and longbows strapped to their back. Others wear long, slender blades that are sheathed in decorative gold scabbards. Wanting to wait and get a better look at who the guests are, you prefer to linger and see who has arrived. But your better instinct is to not aggravate Gandalf by being late. You'd better focus on getting ready. Turning from the carriage and the elves, you brace yourself and then thrust your body against the heavy guest door, and it swings open. Closing the door behind you, you say to yourself in Dash, these doors are wonderful for keeping the cold and uninvited curious critters out. But they also do a pretty capable job of keeping the hobbits out as well. By the time you and Dash head back to the Great Hall, dusk has fallen and snow has begun to fall. You suspect the hall is now full of elves, Beorn's animals, and who knows what. Butterflies somersault in your stomach, and you quicken your pace as you anticipate the excitement of the evening ahead. Thankfully, there are torches lit between the guest house and the hall to light your way. And as you approach the main door, still displaying the silk and silver banner, you are approached by 2 elvish guards, one on either side of the door. However, rather than scowling at you and your canine friend, they smile.
"You've been expected, Master Halfling,"
one states.
"Miss Randia hinted there might be a halfling in a hurry who is running late. Enter now and enjoy your evening."
The heavy door swings outward, and a wave of music, warmth, and pleasant aromas welcome you like an attentive host to tonight's convivial gathering. You take just a moment to compose yourself. At the far end of the hall, there is a small ensemble of elven musicians, playing woodwind and string instruments. They are arrayed in fine gray, silver, and midnight blue, and carry subtle smiles on their courtly, slender faces. Their gentle melody calms and invigorates you. The elf's musical enchantment is interrupted by Beorn, who has spotted you standing in the doorway. He lets out a deep belly laugh.
Friends, sit down, and let's begin this banquet.
Making your way over to the finely carved but sturdy sizable oak table, you take notice that Gandalf and Radagast are not sitting to Beorn's immediate left and right. Instead, they are situated further away from your host, leaving the chair immediately next to Beorn, as well as the one to the right and left of him, unoccupied. How odd, you wonder to yourself. Why would these seats next to Beorn be empty? Gandalf gestures that you should sit to his left. What exactly does Gandalf have up his sleeve? After all, the old wizard does nothing by accident or chance. Some kind soul has gone to the bother of placing several plump, plush beige fabric cushions on your chair. They'll cushion your backside from sitting on a hard wooden seat for the evening, but also elevate you high enough you'll now be able to see over the top of the oversized wooden table. Getting dressed for the evening, you were nervous that you might look out of place at the table, not being able to see over the top of it. You won't have to be concerned about that now. An assuring sense of belonging and being cared for moves through you. Both Beorn and his animal companions look out for you, and you feel blessed because of it. Dash walks in a couple of tight circles and then finds a comfortable spot to lie down on the cushy rug below your feet. You take in the ambiance and appreciate the silken, colorful banners hanging from the wooden beams in the ceiling, hand-painted wooden and metal shields affixed to the timber walls on both sides of the hall, and evergreen wreaths with silver pine cones and dried cranberries and decorative lanterns line the hall, giving the entire space an even, soft, warm glow. Having stifled your Hobbit inquisitiveness for what you felt was long enough, you turned to Gandalf, loaded with an arsenal of questions, but just then you realize that the musicians have stopped playing. And the hushed convivial conversation and quiet laughing around the table has silenced. In fact, other than the crackle of the ample fire in the middle of the room, as well as some movement from Beorn's animal friends who are catering, there isn't a sound to be heard. Gandalf leans over and murmurs,
"This is what we've waited for. Our guests have arrived."
The elven musicians rise to their feet and form 2 lines next to the southern door of the great hall. The large door swings open and a burst of cold air and snowflakes rush in. and two slender elves gracefully make their way up the veranda steps, giving the appearance of gliding rather than stepping into the hall. They have a dignified, ethereal presence that you've not witnessed since you left Rivendell. In a sign of goodwill and reverence, Gandalf and Radagast rise from their chairs to welcome these distinguished guests. Beorn remains seated, but is nonetheless captivated by their presence. As they enter the hall and approach your table, you notice that one of the twain is an elven lord with long hair. He has a stately appearance and carries a bold, but not brash confidence. He wears a restrained smile on his face, as if he was evaluating his surroundings and company. Like many of the elves you spotted earlier in the day, he is wearing twilight gray outer robes. His sky blue tunic and undergarments have a silken weave and seem to shimmer in the firelight. The lady, walking arm in arm with him, has cascading golden hair and is dressed in a multi-layered midnight and sky blue dress that flows effortlessly from her graceful shoulders. She wears a warm smile on her face and looks neither young nor old, but timelessly alluring. And despite the genuineness and kindness of her smile, you sense a great deal of wisdom, joy, and even sorrow behind it. Both elf royals are adorned with silver circlets that flow through their hair and accentuate their noble brows. They are announced as Lord Celeborn and Lady Galadriel of the Golden Wood of Lothlorien, and are courteously seated at Beorn's right and left at the head of the table. However, the chair to the host's immediate left still remains inexplicably empty. Music and conversation resume now that the two guests have been seated, leaving you to speak with Radagast. Gandalf has made his way to the front of the table to speak with Beorn and the two new honored arrivals. Galadriel and Celeborn reveal to their host that they are not the only special guests of the evening. It turns out that Radagast had heard rumors that a remnant of Beorn's kin had migrated south when the orcs came forth, looting and pillaging from the Misty Mountains. This small band has lived in seclusion along the Anduin, north of Lorien. While they haven't been permitted to enter the Golden Wood, the elves took pity on them for being driven from their land. They kept watch over and secretly aided these skin changers in dire times of need. Adjusting your seat cushions and leaning over to Radagast, you ask, "I'm still a little fuzzy about going to all of this trouble to bring Beorn a jewel. He certainly earned our gratitude for helping our dwarven company after a horrible visit and escape from Goblin Town in the Misty Mountains, and then lending us his ponies, but wouldn't a dwarven iron axe or goblin helmet that's been cleaved in half be more appropriate?" Keeping his eye more on Beorn, Galadriel, and Celeborn, Radagast gruffly answers,
While it may seem that Gandalf, and I, for that matter, wander about the lands as vagabonds with little purpose, we rarely do things or say things without a great deal of thought or purpose, Mr. Baggins.
"I beg your pardon," you respond in a puzzled tone, hoping for Radagast to elaborate. Softening his tone a little and shifting his focus to you, the rustic wizard responds,
The area of Wilderland between the Carrock and the Old Forest Road must be protected, not just now, but for future generations. Allowing the goblins from the Misty Mountains to raid and ransack these lands once again simply will not do. And as strong and as mighty as our bear friend is, he can't stem the tide forever. So, it is our hope that Beorn will be able to re-establish his society and his kin in this area. The jewel of which we speak may aid him in this.
Yes, but how can a jewel, you stammer? Suddenly, the northern door of the Great Hall opens with a jolt, and everyone's attention shifts to what is about to happen next. A rush of cold wind travels through the hall as one of the elven guards lets in 2 elven emissaries. Behind them steps a woman with long, wavy brown hair, who is not of elven kindred. She has a caring face that has seen some challenging seasons, and yet is full of life and still has gentle features. Ladylike and graceful, but not defenseless or dainty. She's like Beorn in some curious way that you can't quite put your finger on. Thoughtfully scratching your chin as if you had a beard, you question, could she be a skin changer too? If she was, could she also turn into a bear or perhaps a deer or a wolf, you wonder? Hoping for the best, you imagine that if she is a skin changer, she could change into something more domestic and less intimidating like a rabbit or fox. Having one bear roaming around at night was more than enough, thank you. Her attire is characterized by its practicality and resilience to the harsh weather, much like Beorn's clothing. Her layered ensemble was designed for both warmth and mobility. She dons a cream-colored linen underdress, ankle-length and long-sleeved, cinched at the waist with a silver belt adorned with intricate metalwork. Over her underdress was a royal blue woolen apron dress, richly decorated with embroidery and with distinctive shoulder straps. And her outfit was completed with a burgundy cloak, which was loosely draped about her shoulders and fastened with a silver brooch. While everyone at the table is caught off guard, no one rises except Beorn, who was so smitten that he practically jumped out of his chair. Rising beside Beorn, Celeborn announces,
Noble host, we would like you to meet Anya, a distant member of your kin who fled this land when the orcs from the mountains came down and troubled your people. She is the jewel of which your wizard friend spoke of yesterday.
Unfazed and unafraid, Anya assertively strides past the elven emissaries and over to the empty seat at the head of the table, next to Beorn's seat. The two survey each other, forgetting just for a moment the rest of us in the hall, and then awkwardly smile at each other as they realize that all eyes are upon them. To your utter amazement, Beorn pulls out her chair and helps seat Anya at the table. You can hardly believe it. Funny, you snicker. The most cordial thing that Beorn has done to that point, at least to the best of your knowledge, was given a warg a 5-second head start before tracking him down and beating him senseless. Anya certainly received a more social, friendly welcome than Gandalf did when he first met Beorn last July. If you recall, Beorn barked,
Never heard of you,
to the wizard. While it wasn't magic in the strictest of terms, something magical was happening here. It's as if the door to Beorn's savage, solitary life was closing, and a new door with uncharted possibilities is opening. And so it often is in life. One door closes, and yet another one opens. A new chapter and a new direction in Beorn's life is perhaps being written tonight. Anya's too. And you feel honored to share in it. The music, as well as the convivial conversations, resume. Although you notice that Beorn is speaking and focusing more on Anya than Galadriel, Celeborn, or even Gandalf, who is standing behind everyone's chairs. Thinking back to what Radagast was about to share before he was interrupted by Anya's entrance, you can piece together the rest of his thoughts and plans. Maybe the two kinsfolk might be open to starting a family. And perhaps more of Anya's kin might be open to migrating north and joining them. An entire settlement of skin changers in this area would be a formidable defense against marauding goblin parties or warg packs. Alone, Beorn is a bad enemy who is terrible to behold when he's riled. However, a family of berserkers would be enough to scare the hair or hide off any warg in the wild. Goblins wouldn't dare to venture into this land ever again. For this masterful plan, assuming that it works out, one would have to give the two wizards their just due. Radagast was indeed right. They, him and Gandalf, don't do anything without careful thought. And this plan was indeed a clever one. However, you do see perhaps one gaping hole in the scheme. Pardon me, but what happens if Anya doesn't like Beorn? What if she wants to return to the rest of her kin to the south? You inquire of the brown wizard.
That's a possibility, Bilbo.
Radagast concedes.
But we must trust to luck and fate that things will work out. Anya had heard tales of Beorn's adventures and battles as a celebrated warrior. Intrigued and hoping to perhaps settle down one day herself, she wanted to meet with him and see for herself if his exploits were true. And of course, only time will tell, but luck may be with us tonight, Mr. Baggins. Because even to my eyes, which aren't as sharp as they once were, the two seem to enjoy each other's company.
Just then, Beorn rises from his chair and claps his hands twice, signaling that the food and drink should be served. His animal friends who are serving us for the evening spring into action. With a cheeky laugh that's best kept to yourself, you wonder, would Celeborn and Galadriel have ever been served an entree by a greyhound before? Probably not. As the food is carefully laid on the banquet table, you recall the observation Gandalf made earlier when the Lord and Lady entered the hall. He pointed out that the two of them were what we've all been waiting for. Begging Gandalf's pardon, but this banquet, the exquisite food and alluring drinks, that's what this hobbit has waited for. You've already missed dinner, and it's getting close to supper time. Thankfully, the wait was well worth it. Before you is a bountiful array of sumptuous dishes, vibrant colors, and intricate arrangements. The centerpiece is a savory vegetable pie adorned with intricately woven pastry designs, surrounded by platters of roasted vegetables such as carrots, parsnips, and turnips. Lush green salads garnished with herbs and edible flowers from Beorn's garden provide a refreshing contrast. Wooden bowls overflowing with creamy hot porridge and stews rich with barley, lentils, and leeks, while fruit platters, apples, figs, berries, and pears offer a sweet respite. And the tantalizing scent of freshly baked bread wafts from the ovens. Crunchy baguettes, which could be spread with warm, slow-churned butter and Beorn's sweet honey, courtesy of his bee pastures. The delicious smells circle the great hall. Of course, there were glasses of pure mountain spring water and barrels of aged wine, red and white, poured into goblets with a robust bouquet. A low hum of conversation fills the hall as you and the rest of the honored guests admire the visual feast before you. As the evening and merrymaking went on, and you're filling up the corners with the remaining mouthfuls and morsels left in the wooden bowls and plates, you see Lady Galadriel approach. You hurriedly wipe your mouth with a cotton napkin and adjust your seat cushions. And for a moment, your heart flutters. Her long blonde hair seems to flow as she glides over to you. To your surprise, she bows her head to you. "Oh no, Lady Galadriel, you mustn't show me such honor. I've done nothing to earn it."
Dear Mr. Baggins, I've heard a lot about your adventures from Gandalf and my own kin. Do not let your heart be troubled, nor doubt your valor. For in amongst this mighty company here tonight, your name and deeds are not considered inferior.
Words, at least at this moment, have regrettably abandoned you. You're not sure what to say, which is curious because you've never been at a loss for words. Perhaps the Lady of the Wood's kindness, gentility, and grace are breathtaking, quite literally. Finding yourself at a loss for words, you express your gratitude without saying anything. You hop off your chair and awkwardly bow. This bashful but courteous gesture touches her heart and tickles her funny bone. She lets out a gentle laugh and gives you a sincere smile as she settles in the chair next to yours. Rearranging your scattered seat cushions, which toppled when you leapt from your chair, you climb back up and perch next to the lady.
We are here tonight to reward and reunite a people, the Skin Changers, who have long looked after this land with care and virtue. We owe much to them, and it's our wish that their people multiply and thrive in this country in which they used to thrive before the orcs. Seeing Beorn and Anya together tonight, we're perhaps on our way to happier times. And this land will be kept safe for travelers such as yourself.
That sounds wonderful, lady, but I suspect I might not be coming back this way. At least I don't think so.
I understand.
She nods thoughtfully.
You've nobly helped kin not of your own reclaim their home, but in your own heart of hearts. You're no longer sure your own home is or where you will always want to be. In helping the dwarves retake their home, you may have lost your own, at least in your heart. So it goes with many travelers who venture out their door and into the wide world. You step onto a road, but you never know where it will lead you.
Pretending not to be astonished the elven lady has such insight, you stammer, "I do miss the Shire, of course. Rolling hills and green meadows bursting with vivid flowers. But having now experienced some of the wide world outside of its guarded borders, I wonder if my snug hobbit hole is too small and confining for me now." Surprisingly, Galadriel smiles and gently laughs, and a befuddled look crosses your face. You cock your head to one side like a confused dog does, waiting for more information.
Beorn wasn't the only champion we wanted to honor tonight, Mr. Baggins. For you have also done a benevolent service, not only for Thorin, his company and the dwarves of the Western world, but also for the men of Lake Town and my kin. I am grateful, as is my lord, and we wish to share that if your thoughts and dreams become too big for your humble home in far west, you may abide with the firstborn anywhere in Middle-earth. For your past and even future deeds, they will warmly receive you, and you may dwell with any of my kin for as long as your heart desires.
Finding no introspective words to reciprocate, you merely solemnly nod your head and smile. This is a lot to consider. Being able to live with the elves, though wonderfully generous, the gravity of the lady's offer weighs on your mind, and your smile gives way to a solemn, contemplative expression. Seeing this change in your demeanor, the graceful elven lady asks,
Perhaps there's been enough talk of homes, heart's desires and heroes tonight. And this is supposed to be a joyous, lively occasion. I have heard that you fancy telling tales and reciting poetry from your idyllic land, Mr. Baggins, unless I've been misinformed. Would you recite something for me?
And as the minstrels play, Beorn's animal friends clear the table and clean up. Anya and Beorn kindle their budding relationship, and Gandalf and Radagast banter and smoke in quiet. And you regale the Lady of the Wood with the finest tales and riddles that your little corner of the world can offer. However, as the banquet wears on, your eyelids become heavy. The fire embers burn low, and you feel the tug of a nice, warm bed. You bow once more to the Lady of Lorien and ask her pardon as you take leave of her and the party. Thank you for your company, my lady. This is a night I won't soon forget. Having received a last gentle smile for the night, you turn from her, offer a thankful wave to the rest of the group, and amble toward the large wooden door toward the north of the hall. And you wonder, will you ever see the Golden Lady again? Though you may not know it, this is not the last time that you will see the Lady of the Golden Wood. A blessed reunion in a place very far from here will someday take place. You and now Radagast take your leave of the company for the evening. Seeing you're on the move, Dash gets to his feet and follows you as you bundle up with your heavy winter coats and make your way out of the hall and over to your guest house, your quiet and cozy shelter for the evening. Above you, the black and purple sky is dusted with silver stars that shimmer in the dark. All is calm and peaceful. Thankfully, there's already a blazing fire keeping the guest home warm and comfortable when the three of you arrive. After such a demanding and eventful day, one that you will not forget anytime soon, you're looking forward to drifting off to a gentle sleep in a snug, supple bed with plush full pillows and warm knitted blankets. In the air, you catch the same scent you detected when taking a bath. Radagast, what is that essence that I smell? Do you know what it is?
I do indeed,
He responds.
What you sniff are boiled leaves from the Athalas plant. It has long, slender green leaves, and while it's regarded as nothing more than a common weed by most folks, it was brought to Middle-earth long ago by noble people who are all but gone from our world now. Both plant and people can be difficult to find, but they both still exist if you look hard enough.
Having gained this last bit of lore and your Hobbit curiosity quelled, for the moment, you bid Radagast a good evening and a pleasant night's sleep. With that, you and Dash meander over to your private quarters. So you don't lose too much body heat, you quickly change out of your winter clothes and into your comfy pajamas. And then you size up your bedding for the evening. You nod your head in appreciation for your accommodations. Beorn really has outdone himself. The rustic bed has a charming, weathered appearance with its hand-carved wooden frame and aged, rough-hewn finish, draped in a thick woolen plaid comforter. It is adorned with a tapestry of earth tones and rustic patterns, evoking a sense of wilderness. The plump, down-filled pillows are generously adorned with embroidered pillowcases. As you slip under the covers, the bedding provides a cozy, inviting feel, ensuring a warm and snug refuge on a cold night like tonight. getting into bed feels like falling into a fluffy cloud that wraps around and supports you on every side. The woolen comforter provides ideal insulation, and the plush pillows cradle you in comfort as you settle in for a restful sleep. As you stretch out and yawn, Dash lets out a sigh and a quiet whimper. He's curled up on the floor below your bed, but he looks forlorn. He's had food and water, so that can't be the problem. Seeing you looking down at him, he wags his tail eagerly and leaps onto the bed beside you. Well, okay, buddy, we'll give it a shot for the night. And yet, a night turned into nights, which turned into weeks, and one day blended in with another as you stayed with Beorn and hunkered down until winter began to loosen its icy grip. Chapter 6. Spring began to return to the plains of Wilderland. The scent of flowers sweetened in the air, and bees began buzzing again in their hives just inside the northern gate and thorn hedge. And there wasn't a meal we didn't enjoy freshly made honey. It was a joy to see the garden, which encircled most of the homestead, burst back to life with flowers and plants in what seemed in every shape, size, and color imaginable. It's actually quite remarkable. Beorn is a fierce hunter, but he's also a meticulous, accomplished gardener to have cultivated tulips in shades of red, pink, violet and yellow, pink and white carnations, golden daffodils, white and purple hyacinth, stargazer lilies, and Anya's favorite, a jasmine shrub with glossy green leaves and delicate white flowers. Daddy Two-Foot's nursery is one of the 6 wonders of the Shire that folks travel as far away as Mickle Delving and even the far downs just to have a gander at. But Beorn's garden would definitely give Daddy a run for his money. Looking out at the garden and marveling at it from the wooden benches and tables on the veranda has become one of your favorite things to do. Almost every morning, you, Beorn, Anya, Gandalf, and Dash would enjoy the sunrise, a hearty breakfast, and talking, sharing, and laughing on the southern steps of the Great Hall. And as the weeks pass, you notice that Beorn spends more time at home with Anya and less time patrolling the borders, looking to take advantage of stray goblins and wargs. And as the ice and snow melts on the ground, it seems as if the same is occurring in Beorn's heart. They, Beorn and Anya, seem to make each other very happy, and they already playfully bicker like old soulmates who have already been married for many, many years. It does your heart good to see them together, and the longer you stay, the more it feels like things might work out all right. Even to your surprise, on one bright but unassuming morning, you announced to Gandalf that it's time to leave Beorn's friendly home and continue westward. There were no trumpets, fanfare, or great revelation. You just knew in your heart that it was time to move on. Having observed you closely, at least from a distance, over the last couple of days, Gandalf had already anticipated this and was ready. He and Beorn noticed your restlessness. Through their winged animal friends, they notified Radagast that you were ready to head west again, and he was coming back to Beorn's with his carriage. You see, Radagast was dearly missed by his animal friends at Roscoble. Coincidentally, he missed them equally, as much as you might expect. So he headed back east with the carriage and his stout 7 ponies. Gandalf reports that he is set to arrive later this morning to take you further west over the mountains and as far as the hidden valley of Imladris. You make your comfy bed at Beorn's for the last time. You pack up your cold weather clothes and say goodbye to Beorn's animal friends, all of whom you've come to know and care for. To your disappointment, you can't find any trace of Dash. You should have liked to have rubbed his soft sable coat just one more time. Perhaps he was still sleeping or meandered off to play in the garden. In any event, there's just no time to look. Maybe you'll see him again if you're ever headed back this way. Maybe. Leaving the sanctity of Beorn's guest home is a bittersweet moment. You're ready to visit the last homely house, east of the sea, but you couldn't have asked for a more comfortable house in the wild. As you close the heavy front door behind you, on the wide track you hear the rhythmic clip-clop of 7 ponies, and you wonder if the brown wizard has assigned them names. Along with clip-clops, you also hear the sound of large wooden wheels rolling along worn cobblestones. Radagast and your carriage into the west have arrived, and the carriage looks as inviting as ever. But you still haven't wrapped your mind around how large it is. It looks like a home on wheels. As the carriage slows to a stop and Radagast hops from the stagecoach to assist you and Gandalf in loading the luggage, you prepare to take leave of your host and hostess. Beorn hoists you up in the air as if you were a small child.
Ha ha! I'll miss you, Mr. Baggins. You must now find your home, your place in this world. But we will always have a place for you at our banquet table, should you come back this way.
Anya gives you a peck on the right cheek, and Beorn gives you a hug and slaps you on the back, which nearly knocks the wind out of you. They present you with a modest gift from the 2 of them, thinking you might want and need it someday. It's an unadorned metal bowl with undecipherable runes carved on the outside. You say as you examine the inside and outside of the bowl in your hands. A dish to put out finger snacks for hungry guests, I suppose. I'll certainly find a use for it. Thank you both. Beorn turns to Anya and winks with a bright twinkle in his eye, and she responds with a coy smile and then looks away, almost as if she was hiding her laughter. But neither responds. They seem good together, and that's good enough to make you content. But you wonder if their relationship will continue to flourish. Beorn seems whole now, but it's hard to tell. You never quite know how things will turn out. Striding over in his hurried fashion, Gandalf abruptly declares that it's time to go. Before he could pivot and march back to the carriage, Beorn places one of his sturdy, rugged hands on each of the wizard's shoulders, lets out a laugh, and offers some parting advice. Looking them, Gandalf and Radagast, both up and down, Beorn charges both of them to smile and laugh more, and try not to be in such a rush to get through life. Radagast nods his head earnestly, agreeing with Beorn's advice. Seeing that only one of the 2 wizards replied to his advice, Beorn urges,
And that goes for you too, Master Gandalf. It'd do you good to slow your pace as well. Enjoy your golden years in peace.
Curiously, as you watched his face intently, Gandalf did not nod in agreement. In fact, the smile seemed to disappear from his face. He looked off into the distance, some other space and time that we were not in. Sitting at ease did not appear to be in Gandalf's future. Smaug now is a memory, and the lands between the Carrick and Mirkwood will soon be safe to travel. But something else was weighing on the wizard's mind. Eventually, and only after a very, very long time, would he share what was troubling him. Nevertheless, he tips his bluish-gray pointed hat to the happy couple and does his best to muster a smile through his shaggy gray beard. But he offers no auditory response. Interrupting this uneasy moment, Anya interjects,
And to our young friend, Mr. Baggins, remember, no matter where you call home, be it the Shire or somewhere else that captivates your heart, it's best to amble through life with a companion.
She gives Beorn a squeeze and a loving peck on his cheek. They laugh, bow low, and wave goodbye to the three of you. But no matter where life takes you, this homely sanctuary will always be waiting to receive you again. Radagast pulls you up on the perch of the carriage, and to your delight, there is a rucksack stuffed with honey cakes, almonds, chilled carrot sticks, dried apricots, raisins, and banana chips. All compliments of Beorn and Anya. There's also a small wooden barrel of wine and a glass decanter filled with pure icy mountain spring water from the top of the Carrick. Radagast's 7 stout horses start off. The large wooden wheels of the carriage turn, and the three of you gently roll north down Beorn's wide track toward the thorn hedge, past the beehives, and out the main gate. As the carriage heads north, you turn back south just to catch one last look at Beorn and Anya. They're side by side in each other's arms, waving goodbye to you. You give them a warm but bittersweet wave back to them. Maybe someday fate may lead you back in this direction. You never know. Gandalf and Radagast do not look back. You suppose that wizards are just that way. They have a funny way of determining some things as dignified and others not. However, each gives the other a quick glance, a wink, and a curious smirk. And suddenly the back of the carriage lights up, crackling and popping with fireworks. Squibs, crackers, bacca-rappers, dwarf candles, elf fountains, goblin barkers, and thunderclaps. They all go off with a bang, shooting streaks of light and color into the sky. And Beorn lets out a deep, infectious belly laugh. He's doubled over and howling. Turns out the old wizards got one over on him, and still he enjoyed the jest immensely. Next visit, however, he'll probably insist on a thorough inspection of all of the guests, making sure they don't have any hidden fireworks. Turning to your fellow travelers, you snicker. Well played, good sirs. It seems a fitting way to resume our journey into the west. Radagast, clearly not attempting to hide his mirth, laughs openly. Gandalf, on the other hand, does his best to hide his amusement, but even below the cover of his pointy blue hat and bushy white beard, a smile from ear to ear can definitely be seen. Gandalf's toiling is probably far from over, but you're hopeful that he won't lose his sense of humor. When he chooses to be, Gandalf is kind of funny. And he showed Beorn he still has a sense of humor, and he still is enjoying his life. You take a deep and contented breath in. You've had a wonderful time visiting Beorn, and now you're quite ready for your next adventure. As you take a moment to reflect, the carriage placidly trundles through the main gate and under the stately oak trees and moves along the rough dirt track toward the Carrick. Beyond it, the towering, misty mountains in the west. Chapter 7. Still thinking of your hosts, you ask, Gandalf, will they marry? Beorn and Anya, I mean. Gandalf answers,
Bilbo, my friend, I would bet my hat on it.
Your carriage rolls on and reaches the base of the Carrick, the place where you went sled riding. The snow is gone now, but what catches your attention is something placed on the side of the lane that you don't remember seeing before. At first, it's difficult to make out. However, as your carriage toddles slowly past, you see as clear as day that it's a grotesque goblin's head, helmet split in two, and a warg pelt on a pike. Oh dear, that's not pleasant at all. There are some things about Beorn that remain unchanged. He's still a savage, and he's still a bad enemy.
Quite true, Master Baggins,
replies the old wizard.
But those trophies weren't hung on display by Beorn, but by Anya.
Indeed, she is just as savage as he is, Gandalf. Perhaps you're right. The two of them will be just fine together. So, Gandalf and Radagast were right again. It's never wise to bet against a wizard. What they said about Anya being the jewel for Beorn rang true. The two of them seemed to have found the most precious gift of all. Two halves that are now whole together. Thinking of them living and growing together puts a smile on your face. The carriage trundles on into the west, gently oscillating through the picturesque countryside. Surveying your surroundings gives you a sense of enchantment and nostalgia, and you're content just to sit in silence with your two elderly companions. The rhythmic clip-clop of the horses' hooves against the ground and wooden wagon wheels turning over on the hard dirt track lull you into a peaceful state. And you recall something your mother shared with you when the world was much younger.
Don't forget to enjoy the journey, Bilbo,
she urged. A fitting remark as the misty mountains marched even closer, and your thoughts of seeing Rivendell grow stronger. However, despite the mountains looking so close, there are still many leagues and hours before they are reached. So, you say to yourself, let's be mindful of and appreciate where we are and who we're with at this moment. You're content noshing on Beorn's exquisite honey cakes, almonds, and dried apricots, and peacefully watching the world in all of its splendor ramble by. A gentle breeze carries the scent of blooming wildflowers, thanks to a recent winter thaw. It caresses your face, reminding you of the simplicity and the beauty of nature. Being mindful of staying in the moment, you feel a deep appreciation for the slower pace. And these unhurried moments, a connection to a simpler way of life. Wilderland lazily rolls by, but Gandalf and Radagast perk up and share tales of the elves of Lorien and of Galadriel. While she looks it not, she's lived many a hobbit lifetime and knew the Shire before there were any Bagginses, Tooks, or Brandybucks. Elves never seem to run out of surprises, do they? Well, if fortune allows, you'll have the luck of speaking with the Lady of the Wood again. For now, the sun has dipped below the mountains to the west, and night settles over Wilderland. Radagast's ponies continue their slow but steady trot toward the mountains, and a gentle drizzle, courtesy of the dark, ominous clouds that have gathered above you, has now grown into an uninterrupted rain shower. Radagast, as he reminded you on your journey to Beorn's from Rosgobel, suggests that you might want to take shelter in the carriage's interior. It's getting dark out, and this deluge does not show signs of slowing. So consider turning in for the night. With a smile and wink to the Brown Wizard and Gandalf, you're more than happy to get out of this inclement weather and get warm, dry, and cozy. I trust that you'll see me off to sleep, Gandalf.
Of course, my dear fellow. There are a few things I want to discuss with Radagast before turning in. But I am eager to sample wine and Beorn's honeycakes, so I'll be down before too long. For now, take your leave. Get warm and dry, and then settle in for the night.
Reaching underneath the plush cushions and sturdy bench that you've been resting on, you pull out the silver metal bowl that Beorn and Anya gave you, and maybe one or two of Beorn's delicious honey cakes, just for good measure. Radagast lightly instructs the ponies to halt their canter to allow you to get down from the stagecoach and into the carriage's interior. The wheels slowly come to a stop, but the rain persists. Surveying the curious metal bowl before you climb down the carriage and onto the grassy, moist ground, you ask, a thoughtful gift to be sure, but of all things, why give me an ordinary dish to put finger snacks in? Radagast laughs in spite of the chilly rain.
My dear Baggins, it's not for eatables. Don't you remember what Anya said before we departed? It's best to amble through life with a companion, she advised. Well, that bowl is to be filled with water and not food. And it's not meant for you or your guests, but for a four-legged friend.
A grin crosses your face from ear to ear. Wiping the rain that had collected on his hood, Radagast smiles.
Better step lightly. The rain is coming down harder. And you're keeping a good friend waiting.
You hurriedly open the carriage's heavy wooden door, and there, staring up at you, tail wagging and smile from one floppy ear to the other, is your loyal friend Dash. And he's overjoyed to see you. Kneeling, you affectionately rub his back, his head, and then his floppy ears. We're always going to be buddies, you and me, Dash. And with that, your reacquainted friend jumps back into your arms and licks the left side of your face affectionately as you embrace him tightly. Beorn and Anya are right. It's best to go through this world with a companion. And now you have one who will always be by your side. Having that settled, you ask, "It's time I got out of these wet clothes, and then we can be easy for a while. How does that sound, Dash?" Peeling out of your rain-soaked attire instantly helps you feel more at ease. And the steamy hot basin resting on the wooden table next to the couch provides you with the perfect opportunity to clean up. With cotton washcloth and lavender soap in hand, you scrub the earth from your body, giving you a refreshed, tingling feeling on your face and neck. Peeking into the mahogany armoire in one of the carriage's corners, you find several warm, chestnut-colored cotton towels in which to dry off. You thoroughly dry your curly, wet hair all the way down to your damp feet. It's a blessing to be warm and dry again. And then you locate and slip on your double-stitched teal-blue pajamas with the white satin cuffs. The velvety touch of the flannel pajamas help your body and your mind feel lighter and freer. And before you know it, you're feeling right and proper again. The carriage's interior is just as relaxing as ever. The soft glow of the candles evenly lights the space. The sweet, cleansing scent that fills the air wafts from a steaming wooden bowl in the pantry. It contains a handful of crushed green leaves in it, and breathing it in calms your mind and body. Ah, you remember, Radagast called this Athelas, or in the common tongue, kingsfoil. How anyone could mistake this for a weed and feed it to swine, you'll never understand. It's a gentle reminder from nature that things are not always as they seem. While you're perusing the pantry, it would be a shame not to sample a few morsels of food for both you and Dash. Locating a handful of fruit snacks for yourself, and yes, some tasty treats especially made for your canine companion. Thank you again, Beorn and Anya. You both munch on a few handfuls of tasty snacks before turning in for the night. Desiring something to warm your spirit, you pass on the water and wine, at least for now, and you hold a silver tankard underneath the warm urn. Puffs of steam and a rush of pecan-colored elixir pour from the spigot. An unambiguous aroma of delicious dark chocolate fills the air. You wrap your chilled hands around the piping tankard, draw it close, and feel the warmth of the steam caress your face. Taking a long, slow sip gives you an enticing jolt of chocolate and sugar. The tension in your shoulders and back melts away, and your body unwinds and relaxes. Knowing that hot chocolate and chocolate labs don't mix, you take the glass carafe and pour a cool drink of spring water into the metal bowl that Beorn and Anya gifted to him. Dash happily laps up his fill, licks his lips with his long crimson tongue, and smiles at you as if to say, "Thanks, buddy. I'm no longer hungry or thirsty. So, what's next?" You consider doing some light reading before turning in, but getting warm, cozy, and relaxed seems like more of a priority at this point in the evening. You playfully leap onto the cushy taupe downblend couch, and Dash follows right behind you. You both burrow into the assortment of cotton and silk down pillows and eagerly wrap yourselves in a blue-colored fleece blanket and thick down comforter. You feel a refreshing chill against your skin as you dive under the covers. It won't be long before you're warm and toasty again. The two of you stretch out completely on the cushy couch. Folks of Gandalf's and Radagast's stature would only find this couch fit for merely sitting. But for you, it's the perfect bunk to settle in and curl up for a blissful night's sleep. You arrange the cushions, nestle more deeply into the couch, and take a long, cleansing breath. Mirroring you, Dash does the same and lets out a long but contented sigh. The two of you rest in peaceful silence, listening to the soft and rhythmic horses clopping, the wooden carriage wheels turning, and a gentle ticking coming from the wooden clock on the wall. The day's events and adventures are coming to a quiet conclusion, and you're both looking forward to effortlessly dozing off for a gentle night's slumber. And just when you begin to nod off, the carriage door flings open, and Gandalf stands in the doorway. The rain comes down in buckets about him, and a chilly gust of wind fills the carriage, threatening your cozy, warm ambiance. The candle flames flicker as the wizard enters, hastily shuts the sturdy door behind him, and thankfully leaves the wet and wind outside. He's here to see you off to bed, though you wish he'd make a less conspicuous entrance. Nevertheless, all is quiet again. You readjust your pillows, wrap the comforter around you a little tighter, and nestle deeper into the couch cushions to retain warmth. Dash repositions himself to remind you that he isn't opposed to being petted again. He's an affectionate companion for sure, and you wonder what kind of adventures the two of you will have. Who knows? Hunched over because he's too tall to stand straight up in the carriage, Gandalf shuffles over to you and Dash and offers his apologies for the intrusion. He hurriedly scours the pantry, selects a few of Beorn's honey cakes, and then fills a glass from the small wooden barrel with red wine and reclines next to your couch at the table. The Grey Pilgrim will see you off as you prepare for a night of soothing sleep.
Radagast is more than content navigating the carriage. He's at peace with animal companions, and the disagreeable wet weather doesn't concern him.
Before he completely settles down in the reclining chair beside your couch for the night, he produces sweet-smelling lembas bread wrapped in a malorn leaf, as well as a clear, ornate silver vial. Do I guess right, old friend, that Miravor is in that flask? You inquire. Gandalf nods.
Small tokens from the Lord and Lady of the Golden Wood.
Still wrapped up in the warm comforter and blankets, and comfortably nestled between the pillows and your friend Dash, you nibble the lembas bread and sample the clear liquor. Elvish comfort food, you think to yourself, but good enough for this hobbit. You pause to give thanks for the extraordinary friends and adventures that you so appreciate, and for your new companion. This has been another day that you've eaten and not been eaten by something else, and that's a lot to be grateful for. with thoughts and prayers for friends and family near and far in your heart. You lie back down on the couch, stretch out completely, and rest your head on the yielding pillows. Dash follows your lead and curls up against your chest. In no time, he settles in and begins softly yet rhythmically snoring. The day's excitement and events draw to a quiet close. And now it's time to calm your plans and worries and recharge so you're ready for another day and a new adventure. Gandalf gently waves his staff in the air, and the candles in the carriage dim. After getting comfortable in his chair for the night, he shares with you the ancient story of the great eagles who guarded a hidden elven city named Gondolin, and how his sword, Glamdring, was intertwined in that tale. His calming, raspy speech eases your mind and gives you a deep sense of security that all is right with the world. Your eyes slowly close and you're content with just listening to the wizard's soothing, familiar voice, being lulled to sleep by the sounds of Gandalf's musings, the ticking of the clock, and the blustery wind and rain outside, and the undulating movements of the carriage. You're at peace. There are no negative thoughts or emotions running through your head. And what's beyond today's horizon isn't a cause for anxiety, but anticipation. Soon, you'll be back in the fair valley of Rivendell. But between here and there are many leagues and many hours. But you are in no rush. You're grateful for the past and eagerly looking forward to the future. But your mind, body, and spirit are right here in the present. There is no rush or pressure to fall asleep. You can take all the time you need to doze off to your heart's content. Gandalf vigilantly watches over you and hums softly to himself. Radagast and his 7 horses guide your carriage carefully and peacefully across the plains of Wilderland. As the night gets on and the misty mountains march ever closer, all feels right with the world once again. So you give yourself permission to be at peace, to let go, and to finally enter into a profound rest. Middle-earth and perhaps Elrond half-elven will be waiting when you wake up from a good night's slumber. In the meanwhile, it's time to begin another journey to a land of starlight, possibilities, and pleasant, restful dreams. Half asleep, one last notion pops into your head. Gandalf, you murmur without opening either eye. Do you think Elrond likes dogs?
Most unquenchably curious Hobbit. Will you never run out of questions to ask? We'll see, my young friend. We'll see. Until then, take your rest, both of you, and all weary travelers in Middle-earth who long for peace and tranquility. May you all find that which you seek and deserve during this restful night's journey. Until the morning, Namarie and good night.